morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Today is Thursday, December 20th, 2018. It is just 8:30, or maybe it's a minute before 8:30. We're 851 East, the Community Center in the Sierra Room, 851 East William Street, Carson City. And we're also streaming on the internet. And if you get cable TV, we're on the public access channel. Sue, can we have a roll call, please?
One last time, Mayor.
This is the last time?
This is my last one.
You know.
It's hard to believe, but
it's hard to believe.
Those 4 years went by really fast. But Aubrey will be here with her smiling face, so.
Well, we're gonna miss you, Sue.
Yeah,
so.
thanks. Supervisor Bout.
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski.
Here.
Supervisor Bagwell.
Here.
Supervisor Barrett.
Here.
Mayor Kroll.
Here.
Mayor
Thanks,
McCormick.
Nick, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's call on Nick Emery for our invocation. Nick, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Real good. How about you?
Give us a little something for the Christmas spirit and get us started off on the right foot on other things today, the business side of the world.
Sounds good.
All right.
Join me in prayer. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity we have to be able to gather, and thank you for the great things happening throughout our community this week and in the weeks to come. But Lord, we also ask for your wisdom to continue to pour out upon this leadership as they decide some important things. Give them grace and understanding as they hear different perspectives and different needs that arise. We also pray that you would give them the boldness to do what is right, even though it might not always be what is popular. And that, God, you would redeem their time away from their family and their friends as they serve here in Carson. And that you would encourage them in their hearts as they're finishing different projects or even different seasons of their lives. God, we pray and we ask your blessing over Carson City and beyond. May we continue to do great things. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, now we'll go to public comment, item number 5. This is the time to comment on anything. We're going to take any public comment, and at the end of the public comment, we will have a little time with Supervisor Aboud, a little fun time with her. So how's that? All right, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, fellow board members. For the record, David Peterson.
Good morning, David. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I'm the new Executive Director with the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority, so I just wanted to allow you to put a face to the name and let you know that I'm here to market the living heck out of Carson City globally. So we're looking forward to bringing some additional tourism and visitors and that economic impact along with it. So thank you very much.
You've been on board, what, 4 days now?
That is correct.
4 days.
Yeah, started
Okay.
on Monday.
What do you think?
I'm excited. Today I get
I
a
thought
desk.
you might want to say, I'm going home.
Well, today I'm actually getting a full-size, a real adult desk, hopefully. So I have a little tiny desk about this big right now that I'm working off of. So I'm excited about the small things, I guess. So thank you.
Things come in small packages.
Yeah. But it's been great, so thank you very much.
Want to jump in there? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, welcome, and obviously we threw you into the deep end already. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, David. Thank you. All right, we look forward to working with you, and we look forward to you marketing our good community here. All right. Any other public comment? Okay, come on up.
Linda Maroney, retired. I just wanted to say, Linda Maroney, retired. I just want to say thank you for all your support for the farmers market these last 11 years. I couldn't have done it without you and support from the city, especially Lee Plummel, because he sort of inherited me, and he is the only person left in the whole city that has not retired. I started before Karen and I started before Bob, so I really appreciate all the help. I wanted to introduce Brianna, who is going to take over the farmers market for me, along with Tara Riddle from Comma Coffee and Amanda Long bringing up the tech side. So it's been a wonderful ride. I'm no longer going to be the driver, and I'm going to be the passenger. So this is Brianna Coons.
Well, Brianna, you got some big shoes to fill.
I do.
Because I think, it's not often that a small-town farmer's market makes national news.
Yes.
Go ahead, shoot, go
All right.
ahead.
So I'm looking forward and excited to be the Carson Farmers Market manager. Tara from Kama Coffee will be helping me this year, and we want to continue to build on the success of the farmers market. I know I have some big shoes to fill, and will do my best to keep the farmers market the place to be on Saturday morning. I am currently taking the leadership class through the chambers, which is a great class and is helping me to prepare for the next year's market. My job at Dyer Lawrence Law Firm is my day job, but the farmers market is where my heart is. So thank you all for your continuous support.
Very good, Brianna. Anybody? Yep, go.
Linda, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you.
And thank you to Charlie and Karen for all your support. I just want to say Brianna's been working at the market with me. Brianna has been working at the market with me for 6 years and right along beside me, and she's really been doing the heavy lifting. And Tara has been at the market for 5 years. So together, they have 11 years, which is what I have in. So I think they'll be fine. And I'm only up the street. They know where I am. I'm still going to help them on the backside for this first year, getting their feet on the ground and stuff with the city. So it's been great. Thank you.
Well, it is a wonderful farmer's market for our community. I mean, it really is the place to be on Saturday morning. Everybody gets, feel good about things. You talk to your friends and neighbors, meet new friends, meet new neighbors, and get good food at the same time, good wholesome food. You've done a remarkable job. And because I know all of us, I think all of us in this room have seen it grow and participated in it. I think, there aren't many farmers markets that can say that they've done what you've done in the short amount. And 11 years is not that long of a time, actually, in terms of getting national recognition. You did real well, and you were right up there with San Francisco.
Right. The other thing I wanted to say is I've been invited next year to be speakers at the Small Farm Conference in Reno and at the Intense Conference in San Diego. And a lot of it has to do with the way the market is set up and the support we get from the Board of Supervisors in the city. And people want to know, how did this come about? How does it work for you? And a lot of markets right now are struggling. They can't make it financially. They're in a park or they're in a parking lot and the city says, can you please pay us to be here? Because the cities are looking for ways to scramble for money. So I'm very thankful to Larry Werner for helping set this all up and for all of you to continue it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. Brianna,
Thank
look
you.
forward to working with you. All right. All right, any other public comments? Anybody? Come on up. Good morning, Andy. Merry Christmas.
Good morning. Let me first ask a question. Would this be an appropriate time?
I think, I don't know if anybody else has, any other public comment other than what you may want to say to or about Supervisor Abowd?
And that's what I want to talk
Yeah,
about.
I think, Andy, hang on just a second, and so you can stay right there, because I think, Mr. Salinas, would you come up and tell us a little bit about what you've got here? And I think, for everybody, we're going to take a little short break after we do this. Karen's not leaving, actually, until, are you going to be here at the first meeting? I thought you were going on vacation.
Not until after.
Okay, all right. Well, we have other things for you, but today, we wanted you to know that, and Mark will talk to you about it here, and kind of a Christmassy way of saying goodbye to you. Oh, it looks like the old man came in, too, so. Did you hear that, Charlie, the old man? And Jerry, the other old man back there, I don't know, man. Yeah. All right.
Good morning,
Now,
Mayor.
Mark,
Thank
and
you.
then we'll, because I think what you say it, and then we'll go.
Well, happy holidays to everyone, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be joined by a couple of members of our arts community here. Just wanting to put together a thank you, a personalized thank you that was a Burning Man-inspired stocking I made that the city staff and department heads filled with goodies and mementos to say happy holidays to you and your service to our community. Specifically speaking for the arts community, I want to thank you for your direction and your counsel and your help and your advocacy in helping build a better quality of life here in Carson City. These snowflakes we have here are compliments of the local Boys and Girls Club. They were always eager to try to have their artwork outside of their four walls. And I think they'd be open to maybe doing something like this seasonally as a garland, if that interests the board. The stocking is made with all local materials from a local arts and crafts store, Burning Man inspired, and filled with a whole bunch of care and warmth for you. So thank you.
So if
Mark,
anybody-
thank you so much. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
So if anybody has anything to put other than words, put in the stocking. We're going to take a break in a minute here, and you can put it in there. And needs a Kleenex. All right, Andy, go.
Well, I didn't know whether or not you were going to ask for public comment after you got done sort of honoring Karen, and so I wanted to be sure I had a chance to get my 2 cents in. So would it now be appropriate time? For the record, Andy Engelman. I've been a resident here 40 years. Much of that time was spent at Adele's, and first with Paul and Adele, and then with Charlie and Karen. Karen has given so much to this community. We're so grateful for her. The ABADs have always cared about Carson City from the day they moved here, and they've always been involved in what would be good for Carson, where we're moving towards, what would help, what doesn't help. Charlie's never been shy about saying how he feels about things. And I was thinking one of the things that Karen will now have an advantage on, no longer being on the board, is she'll be able to tell Charlie where to go.
I think she said that to him before. I don't know if it struck home or not, though.
She can now say, "Don't tell me about it. Go tell the Board of Supervisors," And and then everything she's accomplished. I know that when she appointed me to the Utility Financial Oversight Committee, she said, "You're there for the ratepayers. That's what this committee is all about. It's protecting the ratepayers and looking out for their interests." And that's how she feels about the people of Carson City. And when she's coupled with Laurie, and the two of them go on a project, it's like, I call them sugar and spice. And those titles are interchangeable, so depending upon who's good cop and who's bad cop that day. And they've accomplished so much. And, we recently passed that ordinance that's going to help people who have trouble paying their water bills, and that's Karen and Laurie together did that. She's going to be missed. This board is one of the best boards of supervisors I have ever seen in my 40 years here. And I used to cover the Board of Supervisors. I've watched them all. This board has balanced the needs of the public and what the public needs along with government at the same time. They've corrected a lot of things and moved this city into the 21st century. And I know that all of you feel a little frustrated that you're not done. There's more you'd like to do. But Karen will be missed. This combination has been perfect. And she will be missed greatly. So, Karen, thank you for all that you've done for the city. I know you're not going away other than on vacations. But you will be missed on this board.
Thank you, Andy. That means a lot. And you're very special to me always.
Anybody else?
I don't get up at 3 o'clock in the morning for just anybody, so.
Andy. Boy, yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in right now? We're going to take a break here in a minute, but let me just say from the board, we have some other things later when you actually leave for your last meeting. I didn't know if you're going to be here for then or not. But Karen, let me just say, when I drive down Carson Street, I look at the flower baskets, I think of you. When I drive down, I look at the decorative design that we have got in downtown and on Curry Street, I think of you. When I think of, the greenhouse project and what that means for a community, I think of you. And when we think about, trying to ease the pain on elderly folks for rates, I think of both you and Lori, but, you guys are the ones who spearheaded that. And, it's not lost on us. I get letters, and I'm sure we all get letters from people, elderly folks who, can't make it work because Social Security doesn't, not just utility rates, it's more in line with more rent rates. But, any little help we can give folks who are struggling is a big deal for our community. And, I just mentioned a few of the highlights, that you've done. I mean, you've been there all the time through the thick and thin, through the good, the bad, the tough. The ones where we're going late at night, and we all have these decisions to make where we got friends on both sides of the issues, and you've accomplished those with grace and courtesy and mutual respect for other people's opinions. And I think from a leadership standpoint, we all need to take a dose of understanding how you operate, because it's important in this world that we do have mutual respect for each other and that we listen to each other, and you're the example of that on more ways than just one level of making a community beautiful. You're a person who has the ability to to understand where people are coming from from your heart, and that's not always present in folks when you run for election, because sometimes you can get jaded, you can get whatever. You've never been that way. You've always had it. Always had Carson City and its residents as the primary the primary concern, primary issue of why we're a community here. And from my own standpoint, just on a personal standpoint, my little theory of communities is one community where there are no dividing lines between ages, demographics, or ethnic boundaries. And I'd like to say thank you for your efforts in making Carson City one community where we all pull together based on mutual respect and trust and transparency. So.
Thank you so much. It's going to be hard for me to talk, but I would just like to say that it's been an honor serving this community, and this city has come a long way in 8 years. I remember Darren Schultz saying to me way back when we did the 8th of a Sense infrastructure initiative, this is a game changer, and it has been a game changer. And I want to thank John McKenna, too, who is not here, who had an active part in that. And we've come a long way. We have our MAC, we have our animal shelter. We've done a lot of things in this community that were needed, and it's vital. And just seeing Brianna take over for Linda, it's our younger generation coming up. That's what this was all about.
Amen.
Vision for the future. Thank you. I can't talk anymore.
Brad, go ahead.
So, Karen, just so you know, you may feel honored, but it's actually my honor and the board's honor to serve with you, over the last 6 years. I think Andy and the mayor covered all the high points, but I think the public needs to know that what's most important about you is that you talk the talk, and more importantly, you walk the walk, and you always put the citizens and the city's needs in front of your own. And it's been my honor to serve with you for 6 years. So.
Thank you.
Anybody? Okay.
Just thank you.
Do we want to take a few minutes here and say, Karen will be here back in January. Want to take a few minutes? Do that? We'll be in recess for 5 minutes. Come on up and help Karen pull her Kleenex out. All right. We'll be in recess, and then we'll go. But before we go to recess, so let me ask this. Is there any other public comment that I'm overlooking here? Anybody? I don't see any. Okay, fine. We'll be in recess for about 5 minutes. possible approval of the minutes of November 15th, 2018. Everybody had a chance to look at those? Motion's in order.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for November 15th, 2018 as presented.
Second.
I think there's a slight correction. I may be wrong, but on page 27 in the boldface, I believe it says, Super Bunkowski moved to include Federal Lands Bill map reference 4 in resolution number 2018 R16, expressing support of the proposal technical. I think it's proposed technical, unless I'm wrong. So I'll make that correction.
Good.
Motion is amended to include that correction.
Any other corrections? Anything else? All right, there's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the agenda, listen up, folks out there, because we're going to pull a couple items here, at least one I know of. City manager, which one's coming off?
I just have 11B for right now.
In that one, for the record, so people listening can hear what that is, 11B. For the body cameras for the sheriff. Any other changes that you know of?
No.
All right, any other changes, board members? All right. Then unless there's an objection, we will take the agenda as published with the exception of item 11B, which we'll pull. All right, let's now move down off the dais and do special presentations to our city employees. Let's go down. Tom McDonald. Thomas. Do him next. He didn't go to the restroom, did he? All right. All right. Sergeant Carl Fry, come on up. How many years is this? 20 years of being here in Carson City and keeping us safe. Carl, you've been a great citizen and a great law enforcement officer for our community on a lot of different levels, and it's not lost on any of us. You know, you guys who wear the uniforms are out there all the time in good times and bad times, and you see parts of Carson City that we need to, be aware of. And I say it like this, you go in harm's way a lot. And so on behalf of a grateful community, let us say thank you for your 20 years of continuous service to Carson City, and we look forward to hopefully 20 more. Okay, there you go. 20 more. Come on up here. Thanks, Carl. All right, who's next? I'll take it. This is him? Yeah. All right, Tom. Oh, he's okay. All right. Don't worry about it. We can take it later. Okay. Sarah Johnson. Good morning, Sarah. How are you? Public Safety Communications. Boy, so you hear, I was just talking to Carl about, all the things he sees. You hear it all.
I've heard it all.
You hear it all. And, not only do you hear it all, but you have to, be understanding of what's going on. And I haven't been out there too much, but I'll tell you, you some of the things you hear are heartbreaking, and some, you don't exactly know what's going on. But you've done a wonderful job for us. And so on behalf of all of us in a grateful community, thank you for 15 years. And we ask for 15 more.
Yes.
All right, come on up here. All right, come on. All right. Now, engineer. Brian, how you doing? Okay, what kind of degree do you have? You got a... Okay, so you're the civil engineering designer then. All right. So you're the guy who really knows what's going on. Forget those guys who got the degrees, right? You know what's happening. Yeah, all right. Well, Brian, on behalf of a grateful community, we want to give you this certificate of appreciation and recognition for 20 years of service to this community, and thank you for, always being attentive to making things better in the community, always looking for a particular design that's going to be more conducive to creating a great community, and just for being a great city, a great employee of Carson City. And thanks, Brian, for everything you do. Come on up here. Now he's here. All right, Tom, how you doing? Good. Now look at that dress. I thought Sandage was pretty good, but this, you put I have to tell Sandage, you put him to shame, man.
Far from it.
You put me to shame too. Look at that. I
Trying.
guess I gotta look at, what kind of shoes you got there. Yeah. See?
Get down to the socks.
Yeah, what kind of socks you got too?
Mickey Mouse.
Oh, look at these.
Yeah, they're rocking Mickey Mouse. Yeah.
Tom, we kid each other, and you heard me talk to Carl, we just have a wonderful police force here, and you guys do just wonderful things for us. And it's not easy having to deal with situations where it may call for an aggressive move, but you do that with care and concern for the safety of everybody around, and then a lot of times the safety of the victim and the perpetrator. So on behalf of a grateful community, let us say thank you for your 10 years of service to our community, and we look forward to 10 more years. And we're going to tell everybody down to the sheriff's office, you got to dress like him. All right.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You look sharp, man.
Thank you, sir.
That's what it's all about. Come on up here. All right. Ready? Ready. All right, let's take up the consent agenda. Anything to be, any members of the public want anything pulled from the consent agenda? Board members, anything pulled for individual discussion? I don't hear any. Let's take a motion then to approve the consent agenda as published.
Move to approve the consent agenda consisting of one item from the city manager, one item from finance, one item from purchasing and contracts, being item 11A.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion?
And 11A includes the late material.
Late. Right.
Okay.
So amended.
Second.
Everybody got that? All right. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you. All right. Good catch. All right. Let's take up item 13. This is second reading. We changed this, right? Make it more easy to throw people out. It's Christmas. Come on, that's... I hate to say it, but when I was a young practicing lawyer, Cy Ryan would always come up to me because I was always throwing people out of their homes. I represented a finance company. It always happens at Christmas time. So he says, "Merry Christmas, Bob. You just threw somebody else out." So anyway, evictions. All right. Let's take us up. Second reading. Stay there, guys. I think we okay on this?
No.
Really? Any changes on since first reading? Any public comment on this issue? And no, we didn't change it. So, all right. Are we ready for a motion? And let's start.
Ordinance. Sue. Ordinance.
All
sorry, that was quick. 2018-20.
I move to adopt Bill number 123 on second reading, ordinance number 2018-20.
There's a motion and a second. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thanks to everybody who put a lot of hard work into making this a good ordinance. Just thanks to everybody on it. I mean, I think there are a lot of people involved in it. All right. Let's take up item 14 alpha. This is a possible purchase of 4 Caterpillar XQ425 portable generators. All right. City Engineer and Carol. Okay, Carol, give us the top line. Is this budgeted, and where are we?
All right. Good morning, Carol Akers, Purchasing and Contracts. This is to approve the purchase of 4 Caterpillar XQ425 portable generators utilizing Cashman Power Solutions through a joinder contract in the amount of $797,828 to be funded from sewer and water funds and reimbursed also by a Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security grant for 75% of that cost.
Okay. Board members, Dan, you want to tell us a little bit more about why we need this?
Sure, thanks, Mayor. Dan Stuckey, City Engineer for the record. So this is a big deal for us. As Carol mentioned, a grant through FEMA for portable generators, so they'll help in case of a earthquake or big storm event where the power goes out. We can power our sewer lift stations and our well sites, so it's a big deal for us. I want to give credit to Stephanie Hicks. She's our real property manager. She does a great job in her real property manager job, but she also is great at writing these grant applications. She put together a really strong package for this and really, kind of outside of what she usually does, but she did a great job there, and it's a big deal for us, for the city. So we're excited about it.
Yeah, Stephanie's involved in a lot of different things.
She is. She's
go to these meetings. She's
jack of all trades.
She's got her finger in a lot of different pies.
Yep.
Put it like that.
Yep.
All right. Board members, let me ask you a question. What do we do now? Do we have backup capability right now?
We do, but I mean, they're older generators, and we need to replenish and get more, so this is going to help with that.
All right. Public comment? Anybody? I don't see any. Board, are we ready to do this? With 75% paid by the state? That's good. All right. Supervisor Bagwell, go.
I move to approve the purchase of 4 Caterpillar XQ425 generators from Cashman Power Solutions through Sourcewell for not to exceed amount of $797,828.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Let's take up 14 Bravo. This is possible expenditure of $217,190.48 for technology refresh for the presentation systems in this room here today. Eric or Carol, you want to tell us whether this is budgeted or not?
Actually, yes, this is for contract number 1819-.
Bring you up here, huh? Okay.
144, it's for the Sierra Room technology, so it's for this room here, better sound, better recording capabilities, updating it to hopefully help the process here. We are decreasing the contingency amount to 4%, so the contract amount will be a little lower. So we're now looking at a total of $205,353.73 on this one, and item is budgeted.
Okay. Eric, why don't you tell us what's going on and why Keith might be happier?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Eric Von Schimmelman, Chief Information Officer for the city. Yes, actually, I did want to bring Keith Barnett up here, give him some recognition. So for those of you that don't know, Keith is the one that does all the broadcast production for all the meetings, or 90% of the city meetings through this room. He's hidden back in this back room all the time.
I thought he was back there playing the guitar.
Yes. So a lot of this technology that we're proposing here is to increase his capabilities back there. This entire project, there's going to be some construction back there. We're actually going to take part of the storage room back here. We're going to build a equipment room. If you notice, we've got a window over here that is blocked by equipment. Keith can't even see what's going on in this room right now, so he's doing it all off the cameras and looking out the door every once in a while to make sure things are working from the back room. So we're going to move the equipment to the storage room over here. We're going to increase all the equipment, which will be cameras, sound, a lot of the production stuff on the back end, and that'll be going out. The one exception right now, and I'm working with Charter Communications, is it'll increase the quality a little bit at this point. Right now, we have an old franchise agreement that we're grandfathered in with them, and they're working on trying to let us upgrade that quality right there. So I met with them yesterday. Let's see, what else were we doing? Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, so should this be approved today, the project timeline is from January 18th through February 6th, which is the 3-week window when the board is not meeting. The first time we can do that in 2019, so we have that already scheduled out. And I did want to give thanks to also the Parks Department, Eric Klug. This is actually part of his project because the microphones and everything that are part of his in here.
Will we be changing the microphone systems?
Yep, that's part of it. And even the push button and all, I mean, these things are they're from the 60s. So he has trouble getting replacement equipment anytime one of these go bad, so.
We didn't want to be too far ahead of the curve for John over here. But.
So, and also give thanks to Ron Reed, who has coordinated the construction through our facilities for the back room over here. So I think that's all I had.
Keith?
I don't really have anything to say. I just came to be here in case you had any questions about the technical stuff. So,
well, Keith, I know sometimes we look at you back there, you could think he's hiding out back there, but you're really the one making everything happen outside this room and inside. So we want to thank you as well, and we want to thank IT and Parks for taking a look at what we need to do, because even though this is helpful for us right here in this room, it's also helpful for people who want to hear what's going on in our board meetings. So it's a good move. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Any board members? Good. Questions?
Why are we lowering the contingency to 4%?
Because I asked him to.
For what purpose?
Well, I didn't see a need for a
'Cause it's
10%
equipment?
contingency on an IT contract.
And we're doing all the labor? So there isn't a...
So the contract that we're taking forward right now is just for
The
CCS communications, or CCS presentations. They're the primary vendor that we're going to be using for all the equipment. However, the total project budget is $250,000, where I have some networking equipment that I'm buying through other contracts. The construction is not coming out of this, so it's coming out of the total budget of the project. So this was just for that one component. I threw a number in of 10%.
That's our standard.
Just as a guess, actually, if you watch enough HGTV, if you open the walls, who knows what's going to be in there. That's kind of why I put it in there, but I don't expect anything.
HGTV, pretty good. That's where you get all that technical knowledge.
Yes.
Good for you.
No, this is just because they're going to be doing construction, rewiring the building, and we didn't know. But I don't expect to have to do any of that, truthfully.
Any other questions of the board for any of the panel up here? I don't see any. Okay. Let's try a motion then.
I'll make the motion.
Motion's in order.
Carol, I just want to verify the revised amount is $205,353.73. $343. Okay. And I just want to add that this is much needed for a very long time, so happy to make this motion. I move to approve contract number 1819-144 for the Sierra Room Technology Refresh to CCS Presentation Systems for a not-to-exceed amount of $205,343.73.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor? Discussions in order. Public comment. You bet. Go. Andy. Sure, go. Sorry, I should have got that earlier.
Thank you, Andy Engelman, for the record.
Fine, good.
I watched all of the Board of Supervisors meetings on Carson Cable TV, and one of the problems, there's a couple of problems, but one of them is that when you go on break, and then they go off. They put on music and something else. And sometimes when you come back, it doesn't. So I was wondering, just a suggestion, if maybe they could just leave the camera on the board and just let it run like C-SPAN does, instead of closing it down at that time. Therefore, when you come back, automatically we would see that you were back, and there wouldn't be a delay. And then also, lately, there have been times, and hopefully this will correct that you might start a subject or some sort of discussion, and suddenly the sound will go off completely. And then when you finish that discussion, the sound comes back on. I don't know whether that's a technical thing or whether somebody's hit a button somewhere or, what it is, but I just wanted to mention those two items, as long as this was being discussed.
No, it's a good point. All right. Anybody else on public comment? Anybody?
I did want to say one other thing for this. I did want to thank Supervisor Bagwell. She was a big push on getting the funding for this. I'd been trying to get this project for 3 or 4 years through kind of saving up money in the capital projects, little at a time, but because it's a large project, she actually pushed it through this past budget cycle, so thank you.
That was my sugar part for the day. You're welcome.
Good. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. On the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much, Eric. And Eric, I don't know what would cause that thing to stop.
Actually, if you watch it online, it is probably just fine. It is actually the issue with the charter communication and how old that equipment is. It's over 20 years old. It came in yesterday, and we were reviewing it. It has to do with
Eric, can you hit the mic?
Sorry. So the production issues that she was seeing probably is on the charter communication side only. The internet and live streaming are all fine. We actually had charter communication come in. We were looking at the equipment. It's over 20 years old. They know we're outdated. They actually just donated it to us 20 years ago. And we're in a quandary right now because they said it came with the original franchise agreement, which is now housed at the state. We were grandfathered in to do this production. Therefore, there's no support on the back end for it. So they're trying to work with them right now to see what we can do to increase that capability to the public access channels. But other than that, right now, the live streaming is actually going to be the one that's going to have the better quality, the higher end sound, and even your presentations that you see everybody do, the PowerPoints and everything, that's where it'll be really noticeable on the internet. Again, because charter communication, we're grandfathered in, we're having to basically dumb down the system to standard definition TV, and we go through so many hoops right now. Charter was here and they couldn't believe how many times we stepped down the signal just to get it to them. I think it goes through 4 different modulations that we reduce the signal quality to get it to them.
All right. All right. Very good. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
All right.
Like us.
All right. Let's see here. Okay, let's take up item 14, Charlie, another software issue. This is NIBRS, National Incident-Based Reporting System. Where the FBI is changing their system, so we need to be able to talk to the FBI. Go. Sheriff Furlong.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, folks. For the record, Sheriff Furlong, Carol and I have Mr. Angel present for this agenda item. Mr. Angel is from Tiburon Tritech, and I welcome that they took the time to come out here and help us through this process. This is an action item to approve the purchase of software migration for Tiburon Tritech to improve the National Incident Reporting System, a data management system for a not-to-exceed amount of $102,540. Right up front, I would like to note that in your packet, I want to make sure I'm on the right one. I think we're all fine. We're all fine. Basically, what it is this. We talk about communities all the way across the country, national crime rates, Carson City's crime rates, Nevada, and all of this. All of this information, crime data, is extracted out of our RMS systems, that's our record management systems, and it filters right from the local level all the way to the top. I say the top, the FBI's management systems. The FBI has chosen to shut that system down January 21st of 2021. And I've spoken to many of you about this in the past. It has come the time where we're almost nearly down to the wire, and we need to get on the schedule in order to initiate the process if we choose to stay on the criminal justice data systems. So that's why we're here today. It's kind of a pledge for Tiburon to put us on the schedule and begin that process as soon as possible. Steve is going to be able to explain a little bit more. I do want to give you a little bit of background that there were other options that were not chosen, and they were not chosen because of timing and funds. One of those was to purchase a new Inform system, same basic records management system, but for a cost of nearly $600,000 after the board has, and the sheriff's office has just implemented a system that's barely about 3 years old right now. That just didn't seem to be the best option or necessary right now. We still have plenty of life left in our systems. This one is a migration. It's a behind the curtain, if you will. I've answered some questions. There is no hardware changes. There is no add-on services. This is this basically, and Steve can help a little bit here. It points pointers inside the system and tells the system what to pull out. NIBRS is going to be a more elaborate criminal justice crime system. It's going to extract and a lot more information than what we currently do with what we call Uniform Crime Reporting, UCR. We have been on that platform since about 1994, and for some period of time we've known that the federal government is going to come along. This final date, the cutoff date, didn't come on board until well after we did our last purchase. So that's the background, and Steve can give you just a little bit more shot. Unique to this board action item, I kind of shook my head when I first heard this. It's a pay on completion of the project, and so I asked him out in the hallway, well, what does that mean? Because I've never heard of this before. Pay on completion when you're talking about something that could be 12, 18 months or more out into the future. And so I invite him right now to explain that process for you.
Is it Stephen? Is that it, Steve?
That's right. Yep.
Steve, Mr. Angel.
All right. Well, good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. Steve Angel. I'm an account manager with Tiburon, which is also known as TriTech, and we've just gone through a merger, so our current company is now called Central Square Technologies. It's a little hard. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well. So just to add on to what the sheriff said, we're very excited to partner with them as we look to migrate over. As he mentioned, the federal government, the Department of Justice, has mandated that this happen by 2021, and so time really is of the essence. In working with the Sheriff's Department, we identified an opportunity to be able to implement this sooner than later, and by doing that, the plan is that we will start the project here first part of the year, upon approval, of course, and we will take about 12 months. Of that 12 months in the implementation phase, the last 3 months of that will be a certification process with the state of Nevada to make sure that it meets their standards and there's an error rate. It has to meet of a high percentage, I believe it's 4% or less of an error rate in order to be certified. So again, we're excited to work with the city through that process. We're excited to get started, and I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any other information you may have.
My question is actually in the budgeting aspect of this. Since it's pay after it's done, This will be prioritized in the capital improvements budget, I'm assuming. I just want that stated for the record.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So Kenny, you and I talked, my understanding is that we're not going to be migrating data from the old system to the new system. Everything that's currently archived in the old system will stay there and we'll still have access to it. You'll be inputting into the new system once it's implemented, and then we'll extrapolate data from that only going forward.
That is correct. We're pretty well backed up with the old data. What it's going to do is cause us to have to re-educate ourselves on how we read that data. It's an awful lot of information. You might see a different interpretation of how those comparisons are made from jurisdiction to jurisdiction all the way across the country.
Sort of related to Sheriff, but can you give a thumbnail? Can you talk a little bit about how are we doing on interoperability between jurisdictions?
You know, I don't want to pat him on the back too much. Our product is similar to those that are up in Reno, Sparks, Washoe, UNR, all of our most of our sister agencies up here. Interoperability, as it comes to this type of stuff, I got to fall back because I don't want anybody to be misled. I got to fall back on some advice that one of my assistant sheriffs gave me before. When we talk about our platform system, and I'm going to refer to it as Tiburon because we always have, even though we are on Tiburon and Reno, for example, is on Tiburon, that's like two buses driving down the roadway. They don't necessarily connect directly, and you can't step off from one and on to the other, but there is some interoperability, information sharing capabilities that we exercise on a regular daily basis with that. We always seek to improve those interoperability opportunities. The hesitation I have, most common reference to interoperability refers to communications. I think following James and Public Works has been a tremendous educational process, especially over the last year. I think that they're driving us in the right direction so that all of the needs, whether they are highway and roadway maintenance or law enforcement, fire resources, all of those needs are being addressed. Unfortunately, when you talk about communications, you're talking about one of the most expensive ventures that a city can enter into. Our systems are old. Our systems do fail from time to time, but I can tell you I am in a very comfortable spot with interagency communications with our primary partners, usually being Lyon County, Douglas County. We have some interaction with Washoe County and their resources, as well as the state, Nevada Highway Patrol, and we're doing okay.
It's a good pitch. Okay, all right. Anybody else? Any other board members? Public comment on this issue? Anybody? Okay. Motion's in order.
I move to approve the purchase of services for the software migration with Tiburon TriTech to implement the National Incident-Based Reporting System for a not-to-exceed amount of $102,540.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Engel, welcome to Carson City. See if you can get it done under time.
Will do, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right.
And Mr. Mayor, just a note, I appreciate you allowing us, and Nancy allowing us to pull the other agenda item off. Just for your background information, we tried to, I had a conversation to try to explain it the other day, and after about an hour, I went, we're not going to take the board for an hour to try and explain a very small project, so we'll get back to you on that, okay?
All right. All right. All right. Let's take up item 15. Family planning grant. Who's doing this? Nikki, you doing it? All right.
Good morning, Nikki Aker, Director of Carson City Health and Human Services. We are here today to ask permission to apply for the Title X Family Planning Grant. I know it seems like we just did this because we did. The grant that we received from the federal government was for 7 months, so we're in the next phase of applying again, and I have Veronica Gallus with me, that's the manager of clinical services, and I want to let the board know that last go around, she wrote one of the top grants in the country. So what we're hoping that it's going to be a 3-year grant. We're looking at about $375,000 for each year for the 3 years. There's no match required, and we're not planning on hiring additional staff. This is just to continue the program that we have now.
Board comment? Ronnie, anything? Okay. Public comment? I don't see any. We ready for a motion? Supervisor Bankowski.
I move to authorize the Carson City Health and Human Services Department to apply for the Title X Family Planning Services Grant.
There's a motion and a second. On the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's take up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Ronnie. All right. Dan, do you need time to set up? All right, let's take up item 16 alpha. Possible approval of 30% design of South Carson Complete Streets project. Mr. Grundy, Mr. Stuckey, who else is? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a PowerPoint. We're just waiting for the projector to get it. Okay.
I wonder if that's part of the upgrade.
It'll play with that board, yeah. Part of the necessary improvements.
Sorry about that. All right, we're ready to go. Dan Stuckey, city engineer, for the record. Tom Grundy, who you've met and been introduced to before, he's the senior project manager for the city and the project manager for the South Carson Complete Streets project. We're here today to, we've been making the rounds to, I'm sick of hearing myself talk by now, so, but I think we've done 6 or 7 of these. We've been to RTC, who, we had a nice discussion there, reviewed all the plan sheets and got some great feedback. We've also been to RAC, HRC, we've had a public meeting. I'll go through all this today, but you guys are the final step here on the 30% design. So today, I'm just gonna go a little history on it. We'll get in, I've got a really cool flyover video. I mean, we're still early on in the design process, but I'll give you a feel kind of what it's going to look like. And then we'll talk about kind of the schedule moving forward and the plan there. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll run through this pretty quick here on the background because I know you guys are really dialed in on this. But 2014, you all approved the plan of expenditures for the facility and corridor projects. South Carson, we've been, as planned, was supposed to happen right after we did Curry Street, so we're moving on to the next project. So that's been the master plan this entire time. 2016 and 2017, we conducted corridor studies for the South Carson Street corridor, and within that corridor study, there was 2 public outreach meetings, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation of what happened at those, but there was some good feedback there. April 2018, we were awarded $7.6 million through a Tiger grant. These are highly competitive grants. I think the statistics are there was 940 grants submitted, and they selected 32 winners. So they obviously thought this project stood out and was worth putting federal funds towards. So that was a big win for the city. We're really excited about that. We initiated the design team, got everybody together by July of 2018, and we've been moving full speed ahead since then. Some recent accomplishments with the project during the October-December 2018 timeframe is we've had some public outreach, and I'll again discuss those. We've completed the 30% design. We've gone to all these different committees and boards, and then and I mentioned there with the RTC, we had a lot of really good discussion there. So moving on from that, project overview. I've got that flyover video, so I'm not going to hit on. I'll talk during the video. So it's about 4 minutes long, so I'll talk about each of these features as we go through the video. But just to give you an idea, the project ranges from 5th Street to the north, all the way down to about Happy Way to the south, and it's a complete streets project. That's the purpose of this project. That corridor no longer functions as a state highway, and so this project is going to transform it into a roadway that's more appropriate for what it's going to serve today and in the future, and that's a highly productive commercial corridor. But also with the complete streets is making it a street for everyone, not only vehicles, but also bikes and pedestrians. There's a number of improvements, including a multi-use path that addresses bikes and pedestrians. We have some pedestrian crossings to make it safer to cross the intersection, bike lanes. So all of those combined with the roadway make it a complete street. Let's get the video up here. So we're going to start at the north end of the project heading south. And you'll notice there's 2 lanes in the southbound direction, 1 lane in the northbound direction, and then a center turn lane. Decorative street lighting, so similar to what we've done on downtown. It might be we're kind of evaluating some options now on what those lights would look like. We're looking at some lights similar to what was done in Fairview or similar to what was done in downtown, but we'll do some sort of decorative street lighting throughout that corridor. You'll see on this video there's some landscaping features, some of those bulb out areas that you see on downtown. We're going to incorporate some of those paver designs as well. One thing that you don't see on here, but it's a big part of the project, there's a significant amount of stormwater funding that's going to this project. It's a historical area and a big vents. It always, experiences some flooding there. So we're adding a significant, and that means additional inlets across the corridor, as well as some large diameter storm drain pipe to get some more of that flow on the surface into our subsurface storm drain. Here is an exciting.
Does that take care of what happens when flooding is greenhouse garden? Stop. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No problem. Greenhouse gardens, we did implement some stuff. We extended some storm drain just recently with some of our other stormwater money. That's going to help with the greenhouse gardens. But this is going to address more what comes down from the west into, around Carson Mall. It's going to alleviate some of the flooding there, and on the west side of the street there is what this project's more going to address.
Yeah, no canoe in the parking lot.
Yeah, and especially, we can't, in real big events, there's still going to be flooding, but this is going to help in those smaller events, and then obviously even in the bigger events, take it down to a more, better scenario there. Sorry, I'm going to rewind back, but this is the Stewart Street roundabout. I have a slide dedicated to this, so we'll talk about it. But this is going to be kind of that transitional feature from more of a busy commercial corridor to the south to more of starting to enter downtown to the north. Here you'll notice we start to get into a little bit different of a street section here. All of these were voted on at that public meeting on kind of how the street section would look, but 2 northbound lanes, 2 southbound lanes, and then we have a center turn lane for much of the corridor, shared turn lane for much of the corridor. One of the really appeals to the businesses was there's a lot of concrete raised median along that corridor, which really limits the way you can get around the corridor. Between Koontz and Colorado, there's about 4,000 linear feet of it right now. So much of that is being taken out with this project to kind of open it up a little bit more. But I want to be clear too that we're evaluating it. We want to make sure it's still safe. And so in some areas, we may need to keep that. But we are looking at opening up that corridor.
Dan, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
With regards to safe pedestrian crossing, so will you consider some sort of center median such that people can safely get across that
Absolutely.
whole road? Okay.
So what we're looking at is, we call it like a refuge island, but essentially we're looking at some illuminated crossings there where, the push button crossings, and then putting like a refuge island in that center turn lane area. So making it that they can do it in 2 steps across the road. So yes, we are looking into that. So what you'll notice on the left-hand side of your screen is the multi-use path there. That's that kind of grayish band that moves along, and it's buffered by a landscaping area, which is about a 7 to 8 foot buffer. So that is really, a lot of people are very excited about that. Offering, and that's that complete streets that we talk about. I also want to mention we have a bunch of ADA enhancements with this project that we're doing. So upgrades to the pedestrian ramps, some of the driveway aprons, some of the sidewalk along there to make it compliant with the ADA guidelines. So other stuff to talk about, as Supervisor Abad mentioned, we are looking at least 2 illuminated pedestrian crossings. Both south of the corridor, right, Tom? Or is there one north too?
There's one north of Stewart Street.
Oh, okay, so one north of Stewart and then 1 or 2 south of Stewart to help with getting people across safely. Other things too, as far as utilities beyond just stormwater, there is some water and sewer replacement. We're replacing some line that's older and needs to be replaced with this project, and then also some fiber optic communications, which was a big part of our Tiger Grant we are incorporating with this project. One thing that we'll show on this video is where that multi-use path crosses over at Clearview. It's coming up soon, and essentially we had to cross over at some point. So NDOT has a existing multi-use path that runs up to basically where city takes ownership of the right-of-way about Appian Way. With this project, we're extending that on the west side of the street, and then we cross it over to the east side around Clearview, and then that extends all the way north to the Stewart roundabout.
With the recent development that has been proposed coming off of Appian Way on the west side, how is that traffic, which will significantly increase, be addressed?
Yes, so Supervisor, I'll address all the traffic. There's been significant reductions, and then we can talk about as far as how the development there, that we are taking that into account, but I've got a slide all on about traffic here coming up.
Thank you. I was at your meeting at the Sheriff's Department, the public meeting, and talked to Lucia, but I didn't get a chance to talk to you about the presentation you gave then. I'm really concerned about this crossway for the multi-use path from west to east or east to west, whichever way you want to look at it, if you're coming south, east to west, if you're coming north, west to east, because that will be, I think, used well. And so I'm concerned about the speed limits, and I know in your presentation you were a little bit, because it's a 30% design, vague on what the speed limits would be. I'm particularly concerned about people driving north, because when they come out of Douglas County and into that bowl down there by Bodine's, et cetera, and then come up towards Clearview, they'll still be moving along. What have you gotten any closer to speed limits than that last presentation?
Yeah, so where we stand today, and we're having that evaluated as we move from 30 to 60, but we're looking at south of Clearview. Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that would remain 45, which I believe it is today, is what we're looking at. Is that right, Clearview?
Yeah, it starts.
And then it would go 35 north of Clearview to Stewart, and then north of Stewart, it would be 25.
So all the way to Clearview it would be 45 coming north?
No, between Clearview and Stewart, it's going to be 35.
I mean, all the way south of there coming north from, say, Bodine's to Clearview, it's going to be 45?
It would remain like it is today.
That's pretty speedy if you're going to make that cross at that level, that seems to me.
Well, the crossing will be, it's a traffic signal there, so it'll all be signalized, a signalized typical crossing that you would have at a traffic signal area, so it's not going to be like a mid-block crossing, so they'll just cross just like a pedestrian would cross at Clearview.
Thank you.
Another question. Along those lines, Dan, signal timing, are you going to start addressing that now? How are we going to do that?
I've got a slide just for all this, Supervisor, about. I promise I will get to it, and I will address signal timing. You're ahead of the game, but I will address both of those items. Public outreach, I want to address this because I think we've gotten. Anybody that was at the meeting last week, it was a very good turnout for that. We got a lot of great feedback from that. We had some comment cards that people filled out, and we're appreciative of the input. But I want to go back September 2016 and March of 2017. So this was during the corridor study. At those meetings, very heavily attended as well. Those really served as the basis for the design that you see today. The public had the opportunity to vote on the preferred street sections, so the multi-use path and the landscaping buffer and how that all looked. That's straight from the public. They had a lot of input there. So now we're as design you have to refine it, obviously, but there was a great turnout there, and that's really what's set the tone, I guess, for the project moving forward. In October 2018, we divided up city staff and some of the design team, including the contractor, into groups of two. So we had 3 different teams walk out along the whole corridor, dedicated over about a week period, met with each of the businesses. So there's about 250 businesses across the corridor. The purpose of those was just to get kind of people excited about the project, but also hear feedback and concerns from the businesses, which I'll address on the next slide. But overall, the majority of the businesses were very excited about the project. They were excited about, beautifying that corridor, the enhancement as far as business access that we were offering in the project. So there was a lot of excitement there. And also with that, we were forming this database, a contact list, and so we know who the point of contacts. We got feedback on any events that they're having that they might have during construction, because maybe we can work around them. So these were good meetings. Last week we had just a general informational meeting for the public at the Ormsby Room, and really good turnout. I think about 75 people is what we thought, 75 to 80, which for public meetings a pretty good turnout. Got some great feedback from the public. So I would consider all those meetings success, and we're trying, I'll talk about some of the communication tools at the end, but we're really trying, Rachel Schneider with IT, we're really putting out a lot of different things, updating Carson Proud website, because our goal is to keep the public informed through from 30 all the way to final, keep them updated on meetings we're having, where the design is. So we're really making an effort to do that with this project. So some of the comments and feedback, and I just want to take a little bit of time to address these. I think sometimes, when you put out a 30% design, people think it's final, but there's a lot that happens between 30 and final. So really appreciative of these comments. Some of this stuff's already being addressed as we move through design, but we received some really good like engineering comments, related comments on the project, and we're appreciative of that. But I want to talk about the business. There was obviously concerns about impacts during construction, which we completely expected. Just like we've done with downtown, it's a CMAR process. So on those visits, we had the contractor there with us, hearing these people's concerns about construction, which I think is a big advantage. So hopefully, as we progress through design, we'll already have what construction is going to look like, and we can try to minimize those impacts to the businesses. Landscaping, the second bullet there, landscaping obstructing business signage. probably, I would say, 3 or 4 businesses, talked about this when we were out in the field. What we're doing, we're working with the landscape architect. We're not going to have like a row of trees that's just going to block signage. We'll still have some trees, but we're going to strategically place them in areas, kind of group them together strategically to avoid blocking business signage. So we are actively doing that, and that'll be incorporated in the design. We talked a little bit about the pedestrian crossings. We're looking at one illuminated crossing north and at least one south, maybe 2, to offer some safety with those illuminated crossings and also those refuge islands there. So that's being incorporated in the design, and those were some concerns. I talked about the removal of the existing race center median, so many of the businesses were happy about us trying to incorporate that shared center turn lane, just like they had voted on, in 2016, 2017. We've received multiple comments because on the 30% plans, and RTC commented on this as well, about deceleration lanes. So these are like pull-out right turn lanes to be able to allow through traffic to not have to slow down when people need to turn right. We are evaluating, and that was the plan all along, was to incorporate. We just didn't have time to implement and do the analysis before 30, but that's happening right now as we speak and will be incorporated in the 60% design. So I know there was a lot of comments that even came to you on that, and so that is being addressed. Multi-use path connectivity, and Supervisor Barrett brought this up. There was some comments specifically at the public meeting that we had last week about, the multi-use path and how that connectivity works. And the problem is we don't have control south of Appian Way. And, the multi-use path was built on the west side. We want to get it to the east side at one point. And so we thought Clearview would be the best spot, just because we are bound that it's on the west side, to start with, and we have to tie into it. We thought Clearview would be the best place to do it. So we explained that connectivity and kind of the limitations that we had there. And then the roundabout, which I have a slide all dedicated to, obviously people, when a roundabout comes into play, people get pretty excited about it. There's pros and cons that I hear from people, but I'll talk about all the benefits that the roundabout's going to bring on a slide here in a second. And then did want to talk about, when we met with the businesses, there was, some businesses definitely noted that they've seen significant reductions in traffic. And then there were some businesses, and even, I've received emails as well, as some people are still concerned about what traffic looks like there today, and when we narrow lanes, what it's going to look like in the future. So the next slide, and Supervisor, hopefully this will address a lot of your concerns. So we've been monitoring traffic for a long time on this corridor, before the project, after the project. We've had multiple traffic studies done as far as hiring a consultant to look at various things along the corridor, but this is no longer a state highway. We have seen significant reductions, and that's what I'm going to show you with that figure up there. Since the opening of this last extension of the freeway in 2017, we've seen about a 45% reduction in traffic volume along that stretch of road. The model that we were using when we were planning this project, years and 3 or 4 years ago, was all based off a 35 to 40% reduction in that corridor. So we basically hit and exceeded that from what we're seeing with counts today. And also, I wanted to talk about the northern section. So we are reducing lanes north of Stewart as well. And again, it's not being utilized today what it has been in the past, and that's what you see with that figure. They've experienced 2 different dips across that corridor. There was about a 33% reduction with the opening of Phase 2A of the freeway in 2009. So that's the William to Fairview connection. You can see that first dip. And then there's been a additional 30% reduction since the opening of Phase 2B in 2017. So again, it's seen about 60% less of the overall volume that it used to see. So, one question that we've had is, okay, well, it's going to function okay today, or immediately after the project build, but what's going to happen, in the future, where there's development down there and additional. So not only have we modeled it for today's traffic, but we've also looked at the 2040 scenario in incorporating the build out from the southwest part of where that development's happening there. Also looking at development, along that corridor and what's going to come in the future. And the model shows that it's going to function at an adequate level of service today and in 2040 across that corridor. Now, Supervisor Aboud's other comment about signal timing. So we don't have, the city south of Appian doesn't have control of lane configurations and how that was all set up because that's NDOT's territory. But what we do have is some control over signal timing. So right now we're under contract to look at signal timing because we know in that 30-minute to hour peak PM scenario there is significant queuing or backup along that area down by the interchange. So we're looking at optimizing signal timing through that corridor. We think that if we optimize that, that will help that traffic move more efficiently. But as far as this project, we're not messing with any lanes south of the corridor, and really our lane reductions don't really happen until north of Clearview is when we start. So that southern part of the corridor, we don't anticipate this project really changing that queuing there, and we hope to improve it with our signal timing.
Whose signal timing is that? Is that ours or NDOT?
We're responsible for the traffic signals along that corridor.
Why haven't we been able to do anything about it now?
And Lucia, do you want to talk?
Hi, good morning. Lucia Maloney, Transportation Manager. So the current signal timing plan was implemented by NDOT south of Kuntz. Although the city does maintain the signals in Carson City, Douglas County, Lyon County, Story County, our reach is broad-reaching these days. The timing plans themselves in that particular corridor were not come up. The city didn't do those. In that instance, you can think of us as kind of the mechanic or the guy with the toolbox. We go out and we maintain them, we check them, we make sure they're safe, but we didn't do the timing. That said, I've been in discussions with NDOT. I actually spoke with them yesterday on this. They have put in their state planning work program to look at that corridor and give the city money, potentially just give the city money to hire a consultant to do coordinated traffic signals south of Kuntz. Additionally, the city we're working to get in a contract with UNR to do signal timing north of Kuntz in advance of the South Carson project. So between now and, when the project is constructed, we know there's needs now. And then again, once the project is done, to do the entire thing, I think using that NDOT money once the project is completed to make sure it operates in the new configuration.
Lucia, before you go, since we have you up here, could you address the matter of the speed limit south of Clearview? I still am really concerned. You got a 45 speed limit up there, and I understand this is a signalized crossing, but people go 50 and 45s all the time, and it's hard to stop when things change if you're not really, you're listening to your music, let's put it that way. Could you just talk about that? I'm still curious about this.
Sure. No, those are great comments, and especially as they relate to pedestrian crossings, I think speed is always something we need to think about. As you know, 395 south of Roland continues to be NDOT's facility. Personally, I get the feeling that NDOT may be waiting to see how the South Carson project goes, what the look and feel is like with the final product, and then of course there's that future discussion looming out there related to the interchange and whether or how that will be improved. That NDOT study I mentioned in their planning work program, that's for the corridor, the specific area that we're talking about, but it actually extends all the way to the state line in California. NDOT's doing a larger corridor study. We have a seat at the table for that. I would hope to discuss speed and some of these other concerns as traffic comes up north from Douglas County. So those are comments I will certainly bring to them.
Can I ask just a general question to any of the three of you here? How comfortable are you on the modeling for 2040?
We're comfortable.
What do you do when you model that? Talk a little bit about that.
So they look, it's Lucia could probably talk about it, I'll maybe set it up, but it's land use based model. So they look at where, what something's zoned for and what the trip generation based off of that zoning could do, and then where those trips are going to go. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little more.
in terms of the modeling that was done for the regional transportation plan that was adopted in 2016, I'm very comfortable with the land use assumptions that were built into that. In terms of, and this may come up later in this meeting today, in terms of really fully and truly evaluating all of that growth that's happening west of Carson Street on the hill there, at the time of the regional transportation plan, you can think of the model as kind of a worst case scenario. So you take the zoning and you assume max build out, and then it generates trips from that. Now, if we're rezoning things or upzoning, if you will, or making things more dense, those are decisions that wouldn't have been conceived when we did the modeling in 2015. So those are things, when you look at the level of service maps from the regional transportation plan, it may in fact end up being worse than that if we're doing additional density or some other things. That said, as entitlements come in, we routinely update our model and incorporate updated land use decisions. So we try to keep up. We lag a little bit. Every 4 years when we update our regional transportation plan, we thoroughly evaluate it. But, when we're talking about, the development on the hill, there's going to be more trips. I mean, that's just the nature of development. And so I can't tell you it'll operate the same as it will today. With more people, there will be more trips. But it's our job to make sure that the system operates and functions. And I think some of that work with the signals and making sure we're looking at how Curry operates and some of those parallel facilities, we're going to manage it as best we can. I don't think it's going to be gridlock, like some people have been concerned about. But it isn't going to be, a big broad expanse of asphalt, and that's by design, right? We want it to feel different. We want it to feel like a complete street. So those are some of the trade-offs that you all get to look at.
One other question before, and then Brad's got a question here, and maybe it's out of order. I was at an event the other night, and the people I was sitting with said, that street, when it's 6 lanes and it's dark, it's really hard to see what you're doing. So, one, that was an issue about the lanes, but two, what are we doing on lighting on South Carson Street? Are you going to talk about that? You got a slide on it?
I don't have a slide on it, but I should have talked about it when we did the flyover. So we'll have more decorative lighting probably north of Stewart Street. Just for budget constraints, we probably won't be able to extend that all the way to the south, but we're looking at it. But we will have enhanced lighting in the south. It'll probably be more of like the LED Cobra head type lightings that you see, that are typical of like that type of corridor. But yeah, that's a big part of this project is street lighting enhancements. So that should be better.
Going back to the questions about development on the west side of South Carson Street, I think it's that we as a board need to look at the cumulative effects of that as we're looking at projects. We're also Lee's working on a project to match up our existing land use with our existing resources, and that'll be done pretty soon as well. So that'll give us a better idea of how we are affecting our resources if we consider changing zoning or density. So, I think that falls back on us to keep an eye on that. My questions are on the slide that you have up now, specifically how pedestrian and bike traffic gets through the roundabout with the free rights. If you could go, both of you, if you could stay up and kind of walk us through, how do you protect pedestrians and bike riders, not from the through traffic on the roundabout, but on those free rights, where people are going to be accelerating through there rather than slowing down, right? And if you look on Stewart Street, you have a crossing right there where people are going to be accelerating through on the free right.
Yeah, so first of all, this figure that you're showing, that you see today, I didn't have an update, but we've slightly changed that free right to slow traffic down. So now what's going to happen, the free right is basically going to stay connected to the northbound lane until about, I don't know if you can see if you're looking at that figure, the kind of the bottom left yellow strip there, till about, at some point it'll branch off, but it's going to stay connected, so it's going to make it a sharper right to slow people down to help with pedestrian safety there. So this doesn't reflect what we're doing, we're moving forward with now. But as far as, I mean, how it's going to look, I guess, if you're a bicycle heading north, you will have the option you'll be on the multi-use path. You'll have the option to exit off of the multi-use path and take a lane through the roundabout. And that'll happen, you can't see where that transition point will happen, but that'll happen, further to the left of that figure. Or you can stay on the multi-use path and ride up to the crosswalk, which is going to look different there, but you would get off your bike and then you'd walk through the crosswalk. But that sweeping right's going to be much safer, and then the design moving from 30 to 60.
Have we looked at the option of using landscaped medians as traffic calming measures? Like if you think of the Kitski-McCarran roundabout in Reno, they have the free rights, but they've used landscape medians that are traffic calming measures because it's not a smooth radius. In other words, they've changed that landscape median to be able to slow the traffic down.
Yeah. So no, definitely. And we, like I said, we just had a talk about the safety of this roundabout last week with our consultant that's doing the roundabout. They're a little earlier too because I know we brought them on contract a little bit later, so they're still playing catch up to the rest of the design team. So I believe they're looking into what you're talking about, Supervisor Bonkowski, but we'll make sure we pass these concerns around and even mention the Kitski and just making sure they're incorporating those type of features in the design, if it makes sense.
In lieu of perhaps connecting to Curry, ultimately, how is this current design preparing for that?
So this design, I think the location, if you can see the driveway entrance that comes from the gas station there to the top of the picture there, the connection would probably happen, obviously south of that driveway. And so there would need to be, the consultant knows that that's something in the future. Now, if that's 10 years, if that's 20 years, we're talking again with the Forest Service actively, but it would take some modifications to the roundabout. Likely they would have to combine that northbound lane, modify how that comes in to be able to make that work. But so there would be some modifications in the future, but they are aware that that's ultimately where we want to go and are incorporating as best they can in the design.
On the wetlands that are there, is that going to create an issue trying to punch through an access to Curry Street there?
It'll be, if and when or ever we get to that point, that'll be something, yes, we will need to look at the wetlands and how that would be mitigated and go through that process.
What happened to traffic on the north end of town when the freeway finished its next?
As far as
traffic,
North Carson and William Street and
North
those?
Carson.
Do you have?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but when we did look at them and we discussed them at RTC a few months ago, we did see, similar to drops to what Dan showed in his slide a couple slides back when the different phases of the freeway were opened.
And, we have only 4 lanes on north. If you know from the history, why did it go to 6? Because I assume what you're going to tell me, well, let me just ask it like that. What was the thinking of the city when they moved from 4 lanes to 6? They added one on each side. What was the anybody know what that thinking was?
Are you talking about
South Carson?
South Carson going to 6?
Yeah, it's got 6 lanes now.
As far as why NDOT made that decision?
Yeah, why they do it?
I don't know. Darren's going to come up.
No, the old timer. It was approximately the timing of that was it was originally striped for 2 lanes in each direction, and it had a big wide shoulder, if you remember. And that 3rd lane in each direction, that was put in before, but around the time when NDOT started the freeway and dumping the freeway off on Fairview, and then Fairview heading south. And I think it was in anticipation of all that traffic coming down Fairview and then heading south. So it wasn't right when Fairview was built, but it was within a couple years before that when that went to the 6 lanes. So I'm guessing that's why they did that, but it was an NDOT project.
If you were going to build South Carson Street now, would it be 6 or 4 lanes?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
If you were going to build out South Carson Street, if you're going to build a new street there, or would you, on a complete whiteboard, would you build 4 lanes or 6 lanes now?
4 lanes, absolutely, 4 lanes.
Help me understand then why it gets so bunched up at the light down there where you've got cars backed up all the way to Fandango.
It's, there's times of the day, peak times of the day where there's a lot of cars on that road, but it doesn't, just because we're going down to 2 lanes in each direction, it doesn't take the level down so far that it's not unreasonable. That's not an acceptable level of service for those couple times of the day for it to be, there's going to be a lot of traffic there. We know that, but it's not, the leaving at 6 lanes, 3 in each direction, it's not worth it's not worth that either in terms of what we need there. It's not a highway anymore. We've got to get rid of that highway and make it for what it is, and that's 2 lanes in each direction.
All right, John, thanks.
Yeah, this is just for the future, maybe 60, 90, whatever we get to that design. I hear people say things, and they've even said it to me about roundabouts. We all have heard it, I'm sure. And I assume there's traffic studies that show in a general way, not specifically with this roundabout, what the safety enhancement or loss is for roundabouts as to signalized intersections. So if you guys could get that together and let us know when you get to 60, I'm kind of curious.
I think I'll actually address it a little bit in this slide. I can talk about some of those statistics.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so we're ready to move on to the Stewart Street roundabout? Okay. So just a little history on the roundabout. During the corridor study, there was about 5 or 6 different locations, including Stewart Street, that was looked at. We even had another independent analysis outside the corridor study look at roundabout locations and where it made the most sense from a cost-benefit scenario, where there was the demand for it. And so Stewart Street, for those reasons, but also like ample right-of-way, potentially the future connection to Curry, and the safety enhancements there, it was selected and moved forward with. So I want to talk a little bit about what this roundabout will do. We've modeled it again from a standpoint of existing today, how it's going to operate, and how it's going to operate in 2040, and all the results show that it's going to either operate as well as the intersection does today or better in the PM peak 2040 scenario. So the worst time of the day in 2040, it's still going to operate at a higher level or the same level as it does today. But I want to talk about, that's in the PM, but really where roundabouts are the most beneficial is those off-peak hours, because you want to go southbound from Stewart Street and it's 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, no traffic northbound, you're waiting at that light. With a roundabout, it's continuous, it's highly efficient, and that's what this is going to do here. As far as Supervisor Barrett, there's been a lot of data statistics on roundabouts. A big part of our Tiger grant was this roundabout because of its safety enhancements. So I think the statistics from the FHWA is you get a 90% reduction in traffic fatalities from a roundabout versus another type of controlled intersection, including signalized. Also, I think it's about a 75% reduction in just collisions in general. And why that is because, you're slowing. I mean, really, a lot of the fatality part is if there is an accident, it's very slow because they're going around the roundabout, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of big safety benefits, and I think it was a big part of our Tiger grant. I want to talk about that second bullet because our consultant, there's some methodology out there as far as how do you quantify those safety benefits, not only from a reduction standpoint, but from a dollar sense. And so they use methodology, and this is, used in the engineering community. They anticipate about a 50% reduction in crashes at this intersection with this roundabout, but from a societal cost savings, so this includes, property damage with accidents, vehicle damage. I think they like time for like emergency responders, medical bills. They factor all that in, and over about a 20-year period, it's about a $3 million worth of savings at this intersection just from traffic reductions is what we quantify. So to answer us from a statistics standpoint, the data's out there. There's a lot of data. The Federal Highway Administration has published, and there's really no doubt that these are much safer than any other option as far as an intersection. I want to talk about the navigation part because I think people, and myself included, I mean, when I drive through a roundabout that I've never driven through for the first time, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that I don't get a little hesitant going in because they are a little tricky to figure out the first time you do it. But I've got one, I mean, really close to my house, actually in South Reno, but where it operates really well. I mean, it's very safe. I feel very comfortable in it. And this one's going to do exactly that. And what I want to talk about is that it's going to be a single lane roundabout. So I think a lot of times when you have multi-lanes going in, it gets a little tricky because you'll get in the roundabout and then you're like, oh, I want to go that way, but you can't cross over. And so that's where it gets a little complex. Yeah. So you go around and around. This one is a single, you can see on the figure how we're designing it. So for example, the lane there at the top of your screen, that's the southbound lane. It's a bypass lane. So if you want to go southbound on South Carson through the Stewart Street roundabout, you can either take the bypass lane and completely bypass the roundabout, or you can still go into the roundabout and keep going south. But any direction you're coming from, when you're in the roundabout, it's going to be one lane through there, which is going to make it really easy to navigate.
Is it going to be a wider lane? Because I'm thinking of trucks.
That's a question we get all the time as well. So yes, it will be. We've modeled it to handle, what's the biggest truck basically that can go through?
WB65.
WB65, and it'll work for that.
What does that mean?
Big truck, Mayor. Big truck.
Big truck.
No, big semi truck. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That's as big as they get. They will have to go up onto the, Tom Grundy with Carson City Public Works. Yeah, the big trucks will have to come up onto the curb in that concrete surrounding the landscape area, but they can make it through there. And we also made sure parade floats can get through there.
Okay, good.
I want to thank you for that. I did read this. I was talking generally speaking in terms of the public going forward, just showing them how roundabouts generally bring down accidents and are publicly safe.
Okay.
So if you can incorporate that. This specific design pleases me, although I'm not a traffic person, but this has specifics, and you have specific models for it. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll make sure that matter of fact, even we have a FAQ, I'll talk about it on the Carson Proud website, that we're updating throughout, because we get good comments that we want, and a lot of them times it's the same comment from multiple people, which tells me we're not doing a great job on our end of getting that information out. And I think that's a perfect example of like, we all add a roundabout section to that and talk about the benefits. So we'll definitely incorporate that in. I do want to talk about the decreased operations and maintenance costs, and this is more for the benefit of the city, but with traffic signals, the public I don't think always realizes, but there's a lot of tinkering that happens with them, maintenance. It's a lot of cost over the life of a traffic signal. With the roundabout, I mean, you essentially build it and it's really maintenance free. I mean, it's just going to function. There's no signals, there's nothing. So that's a big benefit in the long run for the city. And then I also want to talk about, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but as far as that kind of the gateway to the city, that transitional zone from more of a, that 2 lanes in each direction south of Stewart to more of a feel like where you're coming into downtown north, that we felt with the roundabout would really do. And I'll talk a little bit, I know some of you were involved with we'll obviously have some nice landscaping in the middle of the roundabout, but we're also looking at some sort of like a gateway type sculptural element. And I want to talk a little bit about that on the next slide. We developed, and actually it was per the board's recommendation when we talked about gateway signage, making sure we don't just do something, make sure we put some thought into it, and if we have to invest a little more money to get what we want there, let's take a look at that further. And so we took your recommendation. We formed a working group. The mayor, Supervisor Barrett, were a part of that working group amongst a very good cross-section of the city. We had some business leaders, Mark Salinas, city staff. We had a really nice discussion. It was about a 2-hour meeting. We talked about different options there as far as gateway, which is a very expensive option, signage, which is the cheapest option, where you have a lot of text, welcome to Carson City, and maybe some other stuff. But and then we talked about the sculptural, which I'm showing you here. And the decision of that working group was to stay away from the text signage, just because you really don't want people reading text as they're entering a roundabout. It probably wasn't the safest thing there. So we went away from that. The archway we thought was kind of a dividing feature and very expensive, so we went away from that. So what we're looking at now, and don't get too excited by these pictures, because I know there's like one of a pig. We're not going to put a pig in the Stewart roundabout, so I want to just be very, very clear. Well, unless that comes out, if that's culturally, I don't know. But we are looking, working with an artist and designing something that, takes on the local culture of that area and incorporating that in the roundabout. So it was a great discussion with the working group, and thanks to Supervisor Barrett and Mayor to being a part of that.
Can I just ask a question?
Yep.
With regards to the stones that are still housed at Public Works that were part of the roundhouse, is any of that part of the discussion in utilizing that material?
We did. That was actually a discussion we had at that working group meeting. We discussed that, and Tom, you can get in, because I'm trying to rack my brain of why it was a gateway type thing, so I think we went away from that. And then I think there was some, as far as that being removed, there was some hard feeling, do you want to give okay.
Tom Grundy with Carson City Public Works. We did talk about that, and when I walked out of that meeting, kind of the feeling I had was arches are two-sided and they separate. Yeah. And we wanted to include, and this is really a 3 or more sided element. And so an arch, while it's neat to put somewhere, this probably isn't the place to put it.
Yeah, I will add one more thing. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I'll add one more thing that came up regarding those arches in particular. They're not the size that you can actually drive through, but also the group felt those are something that need to be where people can go up and touch them and see them. And sitting in the middle of a roundabout is not the right place for those. But those are on the mind, still looking for a place downtown or somewhere to put those.
Total project funding. So I just wanted to break this down. It's about $18.7 million. You can see 7 different funding sources, much like we've done with the other corridor projects. I do want to point out, though, we've leveraged our local dollars to to really, you can see they're 75% funded by state and federal funds. So to me, that's a great thing, obviously. So that's a breakdown of and you can see the roughly $3 million of stormwater funds. So again, those significant stormwater improvements that we're doing with this project. Schedule moving forward, I'll run through this. I know this is taking a little longer than what I was anticipating, but I'll run through this. Design milestones, so we're doing the typical 30, 60, 90 final. We're looking at February-ish for the 60, May-ish for the 90, and then final in the summer. These are the upcoming public meetings, so I talked about all the ones we've done in the past, but we're looking at like February timeframe around the 60%, reserving probably the permitting center downtown, a room there, so people, anybody can come in, but specifically the businesses might want to come in, sit down with some of the engineers and design team and talk about what's happening in front of there, so we'll be available for that. So we're looking at something like that. And then January 10th, as far as board and committee updates, I do want to mention January 10th, we're going to the Historical Resources Commission. This is important, with any project, particularly like a bigger corridor type project that we're doing here, even though we're staying within the roadway footprint, we still want to make sure there's not adverse impacts to any cultural or historical resources. So that's why we're going to the HRC, and we're asking for public input if they know of any concerns in that area. We'll be back to you here and to RAC and RTC around the time of those 60 and 90% milestones. And then construction, I mean, we don't have all the construction details worked out at this point, but we're hoping to start by the end of 2019. We think it'll be probably a 12 to 18 month construction duration. But we'll have in future reports, probably definitely around the 90, we'll have a lot better thing to report back of how that's going to look. I did want to mention just real quick, like we're trying to offer a lot of different tools. There's Tom's name there and contact information. He's the lead, knows the most about the project. Carson Proud, like I mentioned, has a lot of information. We're updating that constantly, including that FAQ, which I will update hopefully either this week or next week. We are offering a text subscription service this year, which has been very popular. All you have to do is text Carson Proud to 31996, and it automatically enrolls you to get updates on the project. So I know a lot of people are using that and excited about that. Obviously, social media, we're pushing information out all the time there. And then as we get into construction, we'll do similar what we did on downtown with the construction map and hotline. And that concludes my presentation.
Do you have a slide of the Appian intersection?
I do. There you go, up the top.
Right. Okay. So we have discussed that at some point in the future that could become a signalized intersection. Based on this design and build out, I assume that we are planning for a potential signalized intersection. What has to happen in the construction here to make that change in the future? I mean, is that going to be like a really big project and expensive, or are we able to make that conversion?
Tom Grundy with Carson City Public Works. We've thought about that, and we've planned for the construction of a signalized intersection at Appian. For example, the right-in, right-out driveway that goes down to the frontage road in front of the bowling alley. We've lined up the curbs there, so we don't have to change any of that. We've discussed putting in conduits to allow for the future signal. And we think in this case, it's probably cheaper to just bore the conduits under because you've got the grade difference. So we are not planning to put conduits in there. But yeah, we have thought about.
I didn't understand that.
There's basically two ways to put conduits in. You can cut the street and then bury the conduits, or you can bore them in, which is basically drill a hole.
The wiring for the lights.
Yeah, to put in the wiring for the lights, you can drill a hole, and because the grade difference there, it makes it pretty simple to bore there, and we think that'll be the less expensive option at the time.
Thank you. Can you go to sheet 7? Which is the mid-block crossings.
Supervisor Bonkowski, I apologize.
Okay.
I did not bring all those sheets, but we can talk.
Sure, that's okay. I think this is just an oversight, but on the crossings, the path doesn't go from the south or the east sidewalk through the landscape median, the multi-use path, and then to the crossing. But on the other crossing, which is on sheet 13, it does. I just want to make sure that we're consistent with that throughout and that the path goes from sidewalk to sidewalk. Otherwise, we're just going to have people tearing up our landscaping.
That's an excellent point. Yes, that was probably just missed in the 30% design, but that will be incorporated moving forward.
And then we already talked about the roundabout, so that was all of my notes on the design.
All right. Any other board comments before I take public comment? Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in? We've had a couple opportunities outside of this meeting here. All right. We ready to try a motion? See where we go? All right. Supervisor Abad.
I move to approve the 30% design of the South Carson Complete Street project and authorize staff to advance the project to the 60% design stage.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Board, let's see if we can get through. Do you want to take a break now, or you want to see if we can get through the finance policy?
Do the finance?
Let's see if we can get the finance. Sherry, come on up. Andy, you want to, Ms. Engelman, you want to kick us off on this one, please?
I think Sherry wants to kick us off.
Oh, I thought that was going to be you.
No problem. We're here to present the financial policies. Really an exciting topic after what we just talked about. Sorry. But Andy Engelman
Did we
is here
get the
from...
bond rating update? Upgrade?
Not yet. I'm hoping this afternoon.
Have we got a no?
I have not heard anything. I'm hoping this afternoon.
And you're feeling better? All right.
Still sick.
All right. We want you to feel real good all the time. All right.
I'm trying to get there. But Andy Engelman's here from the UFOC to discuss the enterprise section of the policies.
Andy Engelman, Chairman UFOC. I'll be brief, okay? And so hopefully everybody can stay awake. The UFOC met in November to look at our financial policies. We've been working on this for the last 4 years to bring them up to date. The changes in the financial policies, which you will find on page 2, are in this packet that you got in your late material that came in, financial and budget policies, and if you look on page 2 and 3, you will find the ones applicable to the Utility Financial Oversight Committee. Essentially, these protect the ratepayers. They protect the money, they protect the ratepayers. And we're basically consistent with these. The one exception is that where we go for a 50-50 ratio, as far as the water is concerned, that one isn't 50-50. We knew it wouldn't be when we went for the bonds. Remember the bonds that we got to complete the east-west connections. So we knew that was going to impact that ratio, but we felt it was worth it in the long run. And that completes my report, unless you have any questions.
The ratio she's talking about is debt to equity ratio. Okay. All right. Sherry, go. Stay there, Andy.
All right, so
Andy, you might
I
wanna
just
stay-
like to
Andy,
just...
stay there if you want.
I
ahead.
just was going to go over some of the larger changes in this policy. First and foremost, the one thing we're really proud of is during the recession, we had a 5% funding, general fund balance, 5% to 8.3% is what we budgeted every year. We're increasing that to 8.3% being our floor, up to a goal of 16.7%. And that represents 1 to 2 full months of funding for the city as a reserve. In the enterprise funds, we've revamped this entire policy based on the study from 2013, the rate study. And these policies actually work for every single enterprise fund that we have. They're all within compliance right now. The water and sewer portion, we've split out those specific cash flow needs, again, based on the recommendations from the 13 rate study that we did. We added an entire section for the Internal Finance Committee and what its responsibilities are. In the budget augmentation policy, and this was a recommendation from a couple board members that we spoke with, and a really great recommendation, was to add number 4 in there for financial hardships. This is actually what we did during the recession. We all got together, the directors and the city manager, and decided how we needed to reduce funding, but now it's in black and white in the policy, so thank you. That was a great recommendation. The debt policy, really the only thing we added was number 13, the water and sewer financial policies, the 50-50 debt to equity ratio, again, based on that 13 study. And then in the capital improvement program policy, we added a funding sources section, which kind of lets us know where our minimum funding sources are for those capital needs. The last change I want to talk about was the major and minor capital expenditures. This was previously $15,000 was our cutoff between minimum and major. And at the April meeting where we brought this the first time, it was discussed, where did that come from? nobody knew. So we use our $5,000 capitalization threshold. So if there's a one-time need under $5,000, that would be a minor, and then everything else would be major.
Any questions? Looks like she's incorporated most everything that people had concerns about, but you could. All right, public comment, anybody? I don't see any. Thanks to both of you. These are important things to do, and it wasn't not lost on me that these policies are great talking to rating agencies about them. I mean, they want to know that we're doing this stuff. And I want to thank you for including me or letting me sit in on the rating stuff with it, and hopefully we'll know today or tomorrow, maybe?
I'm hoping to hear from Moody's today, and S&P won't be until about January 4th, I believe, because a bunch of them are on
Yeah,
vacation.
Moody's didn't sound like they were too anxious to move stuff.
No, but I got my fingers crossed for Moody's. I'll hopefully hear from them this afternoon. And thank you for sitting in. I think it means a lot to them that the leadership is so interested in the bond rating.
Well, this is because of a lot of people in this community who've done a lot of different things, and I'm not including myself in that. That, the city has done a lot of things in terms of its coming out of a recession to make sure that its finances are in place. And, I think they were pretty impressed with the fact that coming out of a recession, we put a new athletic center, new animal shelter, revamped urban Carson Street, the downtown Carson Street, upgraded the sewer system, upgraded the water system, put a water line in from Minden to Carson City. All of that while we're coming out of a recession. I think they were impressed with that. At least I hope they were. So if one way or the other, could you let us know?
Absolutely. I will let you know this afternoon. And I think that fact that we did all that stuff helps the economy. It had helped us come out of the recession. So yeah, I think they were impressed, and I got my fingers crossed.
Okay.
I just want to say something.
Jump in.
And Ms. Engelman, if you would please let your committee know how much we appreciate all the hard work they did to incorporate the utility funds in our finance policy. I want to just thank them.
I'll do that.
Okay. John, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, first of all, I may not agree with everything in this document. I'm not a big fan of keeping a 16% reserve. We're not doing that. We're just letting it go. I'd be more in the realm of 12% as the high end, but people can differ on these things. I think it's prudent until you get into an inflationary environment. We're not there yet, hopefully, but when you save money and don't spend it, it becomes worth less if inflation gets rampant. We're not in that situation right now, but I really wanted to just thank you both because you're doing excellent work, and particularly I want to thank Andy for saying to us earlier that this is a really good board, the best I think she said in her time, because she and I come out of the same background in terms of watching government, and that's a high compliment coming from one of the best watchdogs I've ever seen in my entire life.
Thank you.
Got that right. Got that right.
And grateful to have her on board.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in at public? Anybody? All right. Motion.
I move to approve the amended financial and budget policies for Carson City as submitted late material.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. There's a motion and a second on the motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sherry. All right, now we'll be in recess for 10 minutes. bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We'll take up item number 18A. This is to introduce on first reading an ordinance approving a change of zoning from retail commercial to SF1A to retail and single-family 1 acre to retail commercial on properties at 4530 and 4580 Cochise. Hope, you want to do this? I know you.
Yes, Mayor. Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. The subject property, and I have a slide up showing you the subject property, is currently zoned retail commercial and single-family 1 acre. The applicant is seeking to rezone the entire property retail commercial. The Board of Supervisors is authorized to amend the zoning map. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding request. On November 28, 2018, the Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing on this request and voted 5-0, 2 absent, to recommend approval based on the ability to make the 3 required findings. I'd like to speak to the 3 findings just briefly. The first finding is compliance with the master plan. As you'll see in our master plan, this area is designated community regional commercial. The retail commercial zoning district is consistent with that master plan designation. The single-family 1 acre zoning district is not consistent with that master plan designation. Our second of 3 findings is land use compatibility. We've discussed this before. The area in gray on the slide is the area that was recently rezoned to retail commercial, and there was discussion of potentially putting a hotel on that property. Again, it's an area in transition. Area development includes in purple is on the slide is a 370-unit apartment complex. The Chick-fil-A and Starbucks is on the east side, the east side of Cochise. Clearview Ridge, which is in blue on the slide, is 75 units just to the north of this property. And 1 block to the south in the gray is the area that was recently rezoned to retail commercial. If we look at the land bounded by Clearview, the highway, Cochise, and Voltaire, 47% of that land is vacant. To the extent the land has been developed, it's been developed with low-intensity uses that don't require urban infrastructure. With the freeway connection, we're seeing the transition because developers are now willing to extend the infrastructure into this area. Our third of 3 findings is regarding the public facilities and the adequacy, whether or not the proposed rezoning will negatively impact public facilities. Engineering staff has found that the capacity of the city sewer, water, and storm drainage and transportation systems appears sufficient to meet the demand. It may potentially be potentially imposed by a project allowed by the proposed zoning. So as development is proposed on the subject parcel, more detailed technical reports that are specific to the proposed development will come in with those development projects. Again, the Planning Commission did review this project and is recommending approval. And thank you to Supervisor Bunkowski to catching my typo in the bill. The vote was 5 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. The bill reflects a vote of 2-2 with 2 absent, so I apologize for that typo. And I would ask that with the introduction of the bill that we correct the vote of the Planning Commission to reflect 5 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 absent. I'm happy to take questions. Randy Walker and Steve Doncho are present. Randy is the planner representing this project, and Steve is the property owner. Thank you, Mayor.
We have a question here.
Hope, with regards to the 4 houses that exist that border this, that's of concern. And in what was presented, I know the setbacks were increased, but is there any sort of thought process in terms of a green space, a strip park, a something that creates a buffer between the existing commercial, that retail commercial that is there, and that backing right into these folks?
Okay, it just so happens that the request for the special use permit came in yesterday for the subject property, so it is a discretionary review. As part of the 7 findings of fact for a special use permit, we do have a neighborhood compatibility and compatibility with adjacent uses. So that will be something we're certainly reviewing with the Planning Commission in considering a special use permit, given that that's what they just came in yesterday. Okay.
In the engineering division comments, they talk about the potential of a signalized intersection at Snyder and South Carson, and that this development or other developments may have to contribute to that in the future. When they talk about a signalized intersection at Snyder, are they also talking about the realignment of Snyder, or is it putting a traffic light in as it is currently aligned? Do we know? Hi, Lucia.
Hi, good morning. Lucia Maloney, Transportation Manager. So as you know, Supervisor Bonkowski, staff have been in discussions with various property owners around the Appian Snyder realignment, potential realignment area. Most recently, we've been discussing with them interest in realigning Snyder and whether that's something that affected property owners would be supportive of. Staff have been given the direction to continue to look at the realignment of Snyder, but there are some property owners that would be more negatively impacted by that, obviously, than others. So at this time, the range of whether that's a four-legged traffic signal with a realignment of Snyder, or if ultimately it's a three-legged signal without the Snyder realignment, but just looking at Appian and South Carson, is still up in the air. In any case, it is a project that's in the regional transportation plan. It's something, particularly in light of all of these developments coming in on the west side, that staff feel is needed in the future. The question of how we will fund it is up in the air. There are federal grants that we could potentially look at, such as STBG. However, that requires a local match. So whether we get that local match from property owners that may not have entitlements yet, or property owners that are interested in supporting the city in that effort, is something to be determined in the future.
Let me rephrase the question and turn it into a cart and horse question. Are you comfortable with being able to mitigate the Appian intersection, the Snyder intersection, and the cumulative traffic impacts if we as a board continue to approve residential developments on the west side of South Carson Street? Because we have these two impacts now. We have the development that, as Hope said, is transitional development in an area where we don't have the infrastructure in yet. So what I'm looking for is, what is our comfort level with being able to mitigate those infrastructure issues, which are traffic and then the intersection of the road. We're spending almost $19 million to rebuild the road, and now we're talking about potentially having to realign two intersections going forward. That's really what I'm looking for. I mean, what is our comfort level? Are we getting ahead of ourselves here?
Part of the reason that staff made the finding with the current decision right now for the zoning is because when those entitlements come in, the intent is to look at the impacts and potentially mitigate those to traffic if there are any at that time. So for purposes of the finding right now, we'll have to mitigate when those entitlements come in. In terms of how comfortable am I, or my comfort level with mitigating all of the traffic impacts in terms of maintaining the current today level of service on Cochise, for example, as developments come in, there will simply be more cars on that road. So if you're a house that's on that road now, and you see it every day, certainly you're going to see more cars on that road. Will it be an acceptable level of service that meets city standards? That's what staff's job is, to maintain that acceptable level of service. But when you talk day to day about the guy in the house that's there, is it acceptable to him? There may be different perceptions of what's acceptable.
Lee Plumell, Community Development Director. I heard your question earlier, too, about this and over there in the long-range transportation plan. And transportation does work close with us in looking at these traffic zones and what is the build out, what kind of traffic's going to come. So I'm almost certain that if we go back and look at that long range traffic zone, it's not, the current forecast is not for single-family 1 acre in this area. It's for commercial development. So now it's changed to residential, which may change some peak, but I think the long-term plan, the long-term transportation plan still identifies this being developed at a higher density than it is now and accounting for that traffic.
I spent a lot of time looking at the traffic report here, and for this project, if you single it out, the traffic report shows that the level of service is fine. The southbound traffic is going to come out on Appian or Overland. They'll make their right turn and go south. That's not an issue. The northbound traffic will go up Cochise to Clearview, catch the light, go north. No problem. All the levels of service look good. But that's just specifically this development. We're talking about 300 some apartments, 76 homes, this, plus the commercial development on the south that we're putting into this corridor now. And my concern is that cumulative effect, and I don't know how we quantify that because we haven't taken that into account. We have no way to take it into account, as you said, until we get the applications in and we're looking at the actual entitlements. So it just makes me uncomfortable to be looking at all these projects separately when there's also a cumulative effect that we can't really quantify. And I know that you guys don't have answers, but I'm just letting you know that it makes me uncomfortable. It seems like that maybe a master plan review, which we've talked about and we're working on, would really help us out. It'd give us a lot of information that would really help us plan out that whole corridor. I also have concerns that we've now isolated 4 residential properties between 2 commercial developments, and we've created an island that is not going to be attractive to a developer because of its configuration. So have we put these homeowners in a position to where they're kind of stuck? They're stuck in between 2 commercial or residential developments, and they don't have the ability to come in, get a zoning change, and sell their property out to developer because we've created this thin little island through there. And again, you don't have to answer that. This is just my perspective on what we're doing that may have long-range impacts. Going to my next question, in the application, I believe that this application was turned in before we changed the capacity ordinance on the sewer pipes, which went from 75% capacity to 50% capacity. Did it? So I think the numbers in here, I just want to make sure that this application meets that, so the developer knows going forward that they have to meet that.
Okay, if the developer does not know that, we'll make sure he does. I know that in the major project review process, and this was subject to a major project review, engineering was putting all applicants on alert that this revision, looking at a 50% capacity as being at capacity, and they were discussing the proposed amendment even in advance of it being adopted and putting applicants on notice. The other item I just want to mention, just for the benefit of the entire board, is yesterday we got an application in for a special use permit for an apartment complex. This morning, Stephen Pote from Development Engineering was in my office looking at the traffic report because we know that traffic report has to be solid. We know that traffic report has to look at cumulative impacts. We heard the community, we heard the board, and that was the conversation we were having. We had Lucia Maloney and Dirk Goring on the phone with us this morning saying, look, this came in yesterday. You haven't even seen it yet, but we need to get on it immediately. It has to be right. We don't want anybody to be able to say, we didn't look at this right, we committed to that. So I want the board to know that when we're at a zoning map amendment, we're looking at a scope of uses. When the development comes in, that's when we can go at it hard because we know exactly what we're looking at and we're committed to looking at it thoroughly. I also just want to point out, I have on the board, one of those 4 houses is actually already zoned commercial. So I just want to point that out. Hopefully I answered your question.
You are answering my questions adequately. My point is that those 4 houses, regardless of what the underlying zoning is, it's going to be difficult to attract a developer to purchase those and do any kind of a build-out just the way we've left them now. We've isolated them and they go, topographically, they go up the hill. We just put those 4 homeowners in a difficult situation from my perspective. And the reason I asked about the sewer capacity is because it was specifically called out in the Draco application which follows this, but it's not specifically called out in this one, so I just wanted to make sure that was on the record. There's also language in here under existing conditions talking about Cochise Street and adding some striping on the roads at the Overland. Let's see, at the Clearview or the Appian and Overland intersections, because there's no striping there now. So it talks about potentially adding some striping for the turn lanes. Is that something that you'll look at? And I already know the answer to this, but that's something that you'll look at when you get to the conditions of approval?
Absolutely. We kind of have and we've talked about this before, when we look at a zoning map amendment, we're looking at a scope of uses.
Right.
Once we have a development project, we know the intent, what that use is and the intensity of the uses, and we can identify potential impacts from that uses, and that's when we can drill down on mitigation measures.
Thank you.
And I know this isn't part of this issue, but in your future considerations as moving forward, there is a definite impact to schools and fire. And I want to make sure that just as we drill down with the Lampa Ranch development, that there's some sort of concession financially so that we can address those issues for schools and for fire.
Anything else? You're done? Okay. Board members, anything? Public comment, anybody want to weigh in? All right. I think if we need go ahead. You want to talk to us about how you're going to mitigate and buy those extra 4 homes? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Supervisors, for the record, my name is Randy Walter. I'm with Places Consulting Services. I'm representing Steve Doncho and Bob French on their application today. I've been listening to the conversation, and I think it's very good and warranted conversation. As Ms. Sullivan mentioned, we submitted the SUP the other day. We've looked at a lot of these detailed issues as a function of the NPR as well as the SUP that we're submitting. Mitigation is something that we're going to take very seriously, particularly on these 4 houses, 3 of which are really the main issue, but the 4th one's also an issue. Keep in mind, this is really kind of an interim thing that we'll be doing from a mitigation standpoint. I realize that because these 4 houses are in 4 different lots and they're not configured the way they should be for a commercial project, doesn't mean they can't become commercial. The facilities that are there right now, they could easily be converted to office space, for instance, with the existing homes that are there. That's one option. Another option is they could be combined in 1, 2, or 3 different combinations with a retail, commercial, office facility being built there. The third option is it could be incorporated with the project that I'm representing at this point and let land put together for a multifamily project. It's been discussed in the past with the property owners. That's another option. Just keep in mind there are options for that piece, those 4 lots are not being stranded, and it's not that we haven't anticipated possibly doing something with them. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. From a traffic standpoint, the traffic study that we put together, submitted with the special use permit, when I'm not a traffic engineer, my traffic engineer is actually on an airplane on his way home for Christmas, so he couldn't be here. But the comment is, when they did the traffic analysis, they looked at the cumulative impacts of not only this project, but a 10% per year increase in traffic volume to the year 2040. That's included in that traffic analysis that you looked at. Is included in the level of services that we're talking about, primarily level of service A and B, pretty much throughout the project, at the year 2040. So we have looked at those cumulative impacts from a traffic standpoint. We've looked at it from a sewer standpoint. Storm drains is another thing we've looked at. One of the things we worked through with the MPR and engineering is to work on a storm drain facility up Appian to connect to this project to handle our storm drain, plus a lot of other storm drainage that's coming down from the hill down Appian in that area as well. So we've looked at those kind of cumulative impacts and trying to make sure that our mitigations accomplish that and make sure that everything works and functions appropriately. I think the main thing to keep in mind is your master plan has a vision for this area. I think the vision for the area is very appropriate. And it anticipates higher intensity uses, primarily because of the changes that have been made in transportation from the bypass and the interchange that's there, and the future interchange that may be there someday. So I do believe that the master plan's on track. I think we need to try to work on zoning that implements that master plan. This is one small step to make that happen. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Questions? I don't see any. Thank you for clarifying some of that. That was very good.
No problem.
Okay. Any other public comment? Any public comment? Anybody? All right, board. Somebody want to try it?
124.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 124.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion?
Yes.
Discussion's in order.
So again, as I did on the last development in this area, it's not the 10% per year increase in traffic that I'm concerned about. It's the 200 to 300% increase in traffic that'll happen over the next couple of years with the other developments that could move forward down there. So I'm not going to be able to make finding number 2, and I intend to vote against this.
Okay. On the motion, further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passes. All right, let's take up the next item. Let's take up,
We need to redo the motion. We need to incorporate the change in the bill on the vote.
Oh, sorry. I amend the motion to also,
we'll bring it back up here and bring it. Yeah, we'll bring the motion back for discussion. We'll see then if, make it bill correction, the second wants to go along with it, we'll go from there.
yeah, I'll amend the motion to include the correction in section 1 of the bill on the voting record to show 5 ayes, 0 noes, and 2 absent.
All right, there's a revised motion. We've had discussion on it already, but we'll have, all right, on the motion. You ready? Have to do it again there, Kathy. All right, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Abstain. Motion passes 4-1. Okay, got it? All right. All right, let's take up 18 Bravo.
Mr. Mayor,
Who's
if we
doing
could
this?
take
Heather, you doing this?
18C as well.
Okay, go.
Thank you.
We'll take up 18B and C at the same time here, and but we'll have seriatim votes.
Thank you. Heather Ferris for the record. There are 2 applications before you today, a zoning map amendment and a tentative subdivision map. First, I'll discuss the zoning map amendment. The project site is approximately 119 acres in size, and it is located in the Eastern Portal, Virginia, Truckee Railroad Gateway Specific Plan Area. The purpose of the specific plan area is to provide for cohesive development, create a gateway into Carson City, protect visual resources, encourage public and private partnerships, and encourage public and private cooperation in creating public access trails and recreational opportunities. Consistent with the master plan and specific plan area, a master plan amendment from industrial to mixed-use residential was considered by the Planning Commission in February of this year and approved by this board in March. The property is currently zoned general industrial. With the master plan amendment being approved earlier this year, the next logical step in the process is a zoning map amendment to make the zoning consistent with the underlying master plan. Because the master plan is now mixed-use residential, the proposed zonings must provide for a mix of uses consistent with the interim mixed-use evaluation criteria. A mixed-use residential land use designation requires 10 to 30% of the total area be complementary commercial uses to those residential uses. The proposed zoning districts include 68.3 acres of single-family, 6,000, 18 acres of multifamily apartment, 13.9 acres of general commercial, and 18.9 acres of public regional zoning. This mix of zoning districts will allow for a mix of housing types and uses, including open space and trails that's consistent with the interim mixed-use evaluation criteria. So as shown on this diagram, there was some thought given to the location of the proposed zoning districts with relation to the residential zoning in relation to the existing industrial zoning to the north and west of the project. The proposed general commercial zoning and public regional zoning act as a logical transition between the existing industrial to the north and west of the project and the proposed single-family residential uses. The multifamily apartment zoning also provides for logical transition between the general commercial zoning, which is proposed, and the proposed single-family residential zoning. So as we move from the more intensive industrial uses to the north and west, we get into the general commercial and then the less intense residential uses deeper into the project site. The applicant has concurrently applied for a tentative subdivision map proposing 270 single-family residential lots. 3 remainder parcels, 2 would be zoned general commercial, and 1 would be multifamily apartment, and 9 common area parcels. There's no proposed development for the 3 remainder lots at this time. The project site is accessed from Highway 50, with Draco Way being the primary project entrance. The traffic impact study that was prepared as part of the application indicates that a traffic signal would be needed at Highway 50 and Draco Way. We've included that as conditions of approval, and other intersections within the development are anticipated to operate at adequate levels of service at project build-out. If you recall from the meetings earlier this year, the master plan had not been amended previously due to the old landfill that was identified on site and the need to work with NDEP on remediation of that site. Prior to the March approval for the master plan amendment, the applicant had received NDEP approval of their remedial action plan with additional requirements. That action plan will include the construction of a road within the landfill site, removing any exposed landfill waste and contaminated soil, and capping the extent of the landfill with a soil cap. The site will also be revegetated with native vegetation, and a recreational trail will be installed. There will be no other development within the old landfill site, and it is focused entirely within the 18.9 acre common area parcel that's proposed in the northern portion of the project. There are 3 findings of fact that the board must make in the affirmative in order to approve a zoning map amendment. They include compliance with a master plan, compatibility with the existing adjacent land uses, and impacts on existing or planned public services or facilities. Focusing on finding 2, which is compatibility with adjacent land uses, we did hear from several landowners within the existing industrial areas, mostly to the west, citing concerns with compatibility of their development, of the proposed development with their existing uses. And I touched on this a bit earlier as well, but because of the proposed mix of uses and proposed locations of the commercial zoning and open spaces, these areas act as a transition and buffer between the existing industrial and the proposed residential, and therefore helps us to make finding 2 in the affirmative. At their November 28th meeting, the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of the zoning map amendment based on the ability to make the 3 findings. With regard to the tentative subdivision map, there are 12 findings the board must make in the affirmative to approve a tentative subdivision map. Again, at their November 28th, 2018 meeting, the Planning Commission was able to make all findings in the affirmative and recommended approval of the map to the board subject to the conditions presented in my November 30th, 2018 memo. Condition 35 which requires a disclosure be recorded notifying buyers of their proximity to the existing industrial uses, landfill, pistol and rifle range, and disc golf course, was a topic of quite a bit of discussion at the Planning Commission meeting and resulted in modifications to that condition at the meeting. Since the release of the staff report, staff believes there's further opportunity for the clarification of this condition, and therefore is recommending further modification, and that's outlined in my December 19th memo, which should be in your late materials. If the board approves the tentative subdivision map, staff requests the board include the conditions as outlined in the November 30th memo and the December 19th modifications to condition 35. And then you also have the ability to make any additional modifications to the conditions you may feel are necessary for approval. I'm available for questions, and Chris Baker is here representing the applicant.
Lori, go and then Brad. And Karen.
Good morning. On the memo from December 19th, I would like to have us consider adding the restriction that indicates the V&T Railroad, because that's also there, and it has a lot of noise when they're running the track and coming in and sounding their horns and all that other good kind of stuff. So I think we should add that in the comment for number 35.
I just had a couple of things on this application. In some of the comments for Parks and Rec and Fire, their specific comments didn't make it into the conditions approval. Can you just briefly go over how you've been incorporating some of the comments into a more broad condition of approval that is not quite as specific?
So things that are already required by code, we don't need to include as a condition of approval. So we're not including those as the conditions of approval. However, we do attach the comments and include them in the record so that the applicant is on notice that those would apply as well.
Thank you. As I mentioned on the previous item, Lee is working on a resource capacity for water and sewer to match it up with our current master plan, land use, and zoning densities for build-out, so that we can get an idea of if our existing resources match up with what we've master planned as far as densities. This is a particular case where we're potentially changing the use of the property from industrial to residential, which would impact those resources. But I had a conversation with Lee, and though he can't provide any specific information because we don't have the study done yet, he felt that he was pretty comfortable that this is not enough units that it would impact that overall resource plan as a portion of the entire build-out. So I am comfortable with that as well. Again, it's not that many. It's going to be 500 units. So it'll have an impact, but it's not going to change it significantly enough to look at it and say we shouldn't move forward with this. I think it's a better use out there. We've been trying to get industrial off the ground out there for decades and have not been able to do that successfully, so I think this is a good alternative use for it. My final comment is just on the December 19th memo. This is more of a disclosure. What it doesn't include is any language that might be a little stronger to indicate to people that purchase homes out there that if they purchase a property out there, they should not come back in 5 years or 10 years and complain. Right now, this just says your property is close to this, and this. But there's no language in there that says because it's in proximity to these uses, and it does have language in there that says noise, vibration, fumes, odor, dust, glare. But if we could just strengthen that language a little bit so that it implies more or indicates more that when you move into a dairy farm, you're always going to have hoders, right? So you don't get to come back 5 years later and say, we want the dairy farm to move. These properties exist before the homes, and so they need to move in understanding that they're going to deal with those conditions going into the future.
I'd just like to take this one step further, and I did have a conversation with Chris Baker about this. In terms of industry that might produce noxious odors, or even dealing with the pistol range, what are we going to do to protect? In other words, what on any incoming industry, how are they going to be regulated such that homeowners aren't impacted? And from a city standpoint, in terms of the pistol range and all of that and its proximity, what are we going to do to prevent any mishap?
Want to give it a try? Not, we'll get Mr. Baker up here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. In listening to Supervisor Bunkowski's comment, I scribbled the following note, and I'm not sure if it also will be responsive to what you said. But perhaps a sentence to the effect of this disclosure is made at the request of the Carson City Board of Supervisors with the intention of protecting the industrial properties, the city's landfill, rifle and pistol range, and disc golf course complex. So it's clear the intent is to protect these uses. So it doesn't say you're not allowed to come back and complain, but it says we're letting you know because these uses are here and they're important to the city and we want to protect them.
Right.
Maybe this isn't strong enough, but that's a start.
Yeah, I think that's good, and then add the V&T.
But mine is a potential homeowner. How are they protected? What's the onus on the other end to make sure that we don't have any problems? Incoming industry, things of that nature. What are we doing with regards to that?
First, it's Heather's project, so I'm sorry I'm jumping in, but I'm jumping in because I remember when we brought the master plan amendment through, and it was Supervisor Bunkowski, and I repeated your comments at the Planning Commission meeting, who said you need the disclosure. And the discussion at the board meeting at the time of master plan amendment was, wait, we have industrial uses. Those are important to the city. We want to protect those. We need the disclosure to let everyone know. So I don't think I think, as Heather explained, the way the zoning is set up, it's so that we create compatibility in land uses and adjacent land uses. And so we have the uses that can tolerate noises, fumes, so on and so forth, closer to where that source is, if you will. And the single-family residential is somewhat buffered from those uses. Having said that, I think our intent, and maybe I'm wrong, so I'll pose this as a question, I think the intent is to protect the industrial uses, protect the gun range, protect the disc golf, and just say to everybody, you're welcome to this house, but by the way, all these things are there, and we have every intention of protecting them.
That's my point, right?
Well, I don't know if it's too strong or not, but you could say, adding on a little phrase, what you said there, these uses may affect your quality of life. Okay. All right. Other comments or questions of the staff before I take public comment? We'll see. I don't know if we need to get Mr. Baker up here or not yet. Okay. Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Christy Scott. I'm a local shooter. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay, my name is Christy Scott. I am a Carson City resident. I'm a business owner in Carson City. I have a gun store. I'm a trainer. I'm also a female that has survived a home invasion, and I need a place to practice, and our range is closed right now. We have a large group of people thank you, Supervisor Bagwell, for having a meeting for us last week. We have a huge group of people. We've collected 1,790 signatures to reopen the range. Right now, we do not have a safe place to practice, and the concern is that this development going in is going to completely end the range, just like it did the racetrack. People are, and I don't know what the particulars are with the racetrack, but people are comparing this housing development to being the beginning of the end for the rifle and pistol range, similar to the way we no longer have that racetrack. You have a ton of people moving in from California. One of the reasons they're moving here are the gun laws and the ability to come and shoot. And just in the past month, with the range being closed, our ammunition sales have completely depleted. They're not happening. Because people will walk into the store and say, oh, we're getting ready to go to the range, because they're visiting from California, and they're like, oh, it's closed. There's no other place in Carson City that is safe to go. There's no place for anyone to practice. And as a former law enforcement officer, firefighter, this is a huge safety concern for the shooters in Carson City, for the business owners, and I believe also for the Rifle and Pistol Club. So I'm here to comment, number one, that I'm very concerned about this development. There are going to be kids walking around on trails and everything else. And you can't tell me they're not going to wander onto the rifle and pistol range grounds. Kids explore. They go all over the place. I don't think this is a good use for this area. I don't think it's a good use for Carson City. And I appreciate you taking my comments.
What's your position on the safety of the range right now? I mean, it's closed right now. What's your position on whether it should be closed now or not?
I think it should be opened. It's been self-policed for years. We haven't had any, in the last 2 years, that's the most problems that we had. And since you've asked about that, there is a conflict of interest currently with the group that is managing that range. The president of that group is a Carson City business owner that benefits from that group.
All right, well, we don't need to get too far into that.
Well, it is a concern for the residents of the city.
All right, I got you.
Thank you.
All right. Further public comment? Anybody? By the way, were those comments made at Planning Commission level?
I wasn't aware of, I did not.
Okay, I just asking, just for the record, that's all. All right. Board? Somebody want to try? Read it.
Bill number?
125.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 125. The conditions, that's in the next item, correct? Okay.
Second? There's a motion and there's a second on the motion. Discussion? Let me get mine going here again. On the motion, I see no discussion on the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, thank you. All right. Is there any public comment on the tentative subdivision map? Okay. All right. Motion's in order.
I move to approve TMS-18-154 tentative subdivision map known as the Plateau Development based on the ability to make the required findings in the affirmative and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the memorandum dated November 30th, 2018 from staff, with a note that there is a December 19th memo regarding condition 35, modifying that condition based on the interaction here today to be ultimately codified by staff. That'd be great.
For the benefit of the record, the discussion reflected that The memo of December 19th, item 35, is modified as written in the memo with the following modifications. That the V&T Railroad is added to the list of uses that are in proximity to the site, and language is added to note that this disclosure is made at the request of the Carson City Board of Supervisors with the intention of protecting the industrial areas, the city's landfill, rifle and pistol range, disc golf course, and the V&T Railroad, and that these uses may, I forget what the mayor's wording was, may affect your quality of life.
So then the sentence would continue,
Oh, yes.
which may also cause inconvenience or discomfort, including but not limited to noise, vibrations, fumes, odors, dust, glare, or physical activity. Okay. So my motion as stated on the record.
Very clear on the motion, second? Okay, on the motion, discussion's in order.
So I just want to thank Ms. Scott for coming today to represent the point of view from many of the users of the range. And I can only support this because we've made the statements in here that those are the primary uses and we're going to protect them. And I think this board's being very clear to any future residents that these were here first and we're not moving them. So, like Brad said, they can come and complain, but we disclosed it to you that it was a priority to our community. So, for that reason, I'll support it.
Okay, further discussion. All right, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, carried, okay. All right, thank you, good comment. All right, let's now take up Technology Fund, item 19 alpha. Who's doing this one? Oh, okay, Sue, I'm sorry. One last report, huh?
One, I just thought I better get this one in.
All right, go.
The Recorder's Office has been looking at spending a little bit of their money out of their technology fund to, do you know that we're the only recorder in the state of Nevada that does not have a scanning map scanner? So we've been looking at purchasing a scanner, so we're able to actually scan the maps ourselves and print maps out, recorded maps out for the public for purchase. I believe we don't have a travel fund under the Recorder's Office, so we use these funds for traveling to conferences and training. Any type of improvements to the office as far as technology goes, we use this fund for that types of things, but they increased it, the legislature increased it from $3 to $5 per document recorded, which is really nice, so it's kind of gone up a little bit, so we'll be able to spend some money.
All right, Sue. Any questions of Sue? Go ahead, Brad.
Sue, did you bring the list of expenses? If not, I have them here. Did you bring your list of expenses? I have them if you didn't bring them.
Yeah, I have them on my
Okay,
email.
can you run through those so we can get a net figure here? So you show income, estimated income of $49,980. Can you just run through the expenses, please?
Sure. Our estimated expenses would be, we're going to be purchasing, let's see.
I have them all right here.
You have them right there?
Yeah. So
Sorry.
for the map scanner, an estimated cost of $14,995 to $15,887, with annual licensing and maintenance estimated at $1,720 a year. Then training, travel, and memberships, approximately $2,000. Maintenance and licensing, other than for the map scanner, is $1,795 a year. $1,795. Additional monitor at $200, and that was the total.
Yeah, and those are all estimates, as things come up, we could possibly spend those money, but we'll have it in the report in the future.
You may not know, does the library have a map scanner?
I don't believe they do. I think our maps are currently scanned by Planning, Public Works. We met with Matt Lawton and looked at their outfit out there, but we have a little bit of work to do and make sure that all these maps are permanent records and microfilmed, so.
Okay. All right. All right, public comment on this issue? Anybody? Thanks for bringing up the expenditures, Brad. That's good. Okay. We ready for a motion? Let's give it a try.
I move to accept the annual technology fund report as submitted.
There's a motion, second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. All right, let's take up the last item for the morning. This is the contract for the city manager. I understand there's been a lot of different changes going around. People have seen Dan's memorandum. Dan, you want to tell us where we are? Just go through it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Tell
For
us
the
what
record,
changes you've proposed. I know we've had a lot of late material and people talking about it. Just tell us where we've been and where we are today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Dan Yu, Chief Deputy DA. Historically, this matter is presented by the HR department. It's my pleasure today to pinch hit on behalf of HR. And just to kind of dive directly into, this two-part package that's being presented for review and consideration today by the board. It's the draft proposed agreement for appointment of Nancy Paulson as the permanent city manager for a term of 2 years, as discussed at the last meeting. This board directed the DA's office to go into the body template of the existing agreement, under which Nancy is employed as the interim manager, and I really wanted to restructure that. So what I did was I went into the language and I've clarified it to the extent possible. I wanted to make it as legally defensible as possible for the city, at the same time satisfying the concerns that Nancy may have as the prospective employee. I've reorganized a lot of the provisions, and I've streamlined a lot of the duties and the obligations that are expected by both parties in this matter. I've really emphasized the fact that although this is a contract in nature, this does not alter or otherwise modify the fact that she is an at-will employee and will continue to be an at-will employee and will serve at the pleasure of this board. Another significant thing that I changed in the existing template was I removed an attachment that previously existed. That was both for Mr. Morano's, the previous city manager's agreement, as well as for Ms. Paulson's interim agreement. After reviewing that attachment, which is basically a release and a waiver indemnifying the city from any and all claims in the event she resigns, I thought about that and I decided to remove it because I didn't think it's actually enforceable. This is an at-will employee nature and relationship. She's free to resign at any time. We can't really force her not to resign unless she signs such a waiver. I think it's probably better suited and confined to a situation, which I don't expect will occur, but situations where there's actually an employee dispute. And so typically that's used, in the context of settlement. Finally, the other significant change that I made in the existing template was, I created what's known as an evergreen clause. It's a little bit different from your standard evergreen clause in that evergreen clauses normally protect both parties where considerations are being made. Negotiations are pending. There isn't a conclusive agreement to be executed, but you don't want the relationship to be altered, so you keep in place the existing terms and conditions. Typically, it goes for a year or 2 years, but I've shortened it to a month-to-month renewal. That protects, I think, both the city and also Ms. Paulson once she's appointed, so that there's no disruption to her on her day-to-day operations and duties. Because we all know we get busy and sometimes, things happen. I've also provided just a short briefing memo that hits some of these major points. I want to keep my remarks short for the most part and really provide ample opportunity for the parties, and by the parties I mean the employer as the board and the city and the prospective appointee to this new employment contract to really come to a meeting of the minds with regards to those terms that really are policy matters. And those are terms to be, kind of discussed and negotiated on the record between the parties here. And those would include, again, the initial term and the renewal, if everyone is good with that. I think that should be a pretty short discussion. There's a proposed starting base salary that's incorporated in this agreement at this time, which is the salary that she's currently entitled to at the rate of $177,000, $177,683 per year. That's her base salary. She would be subject to annual performance evaluations, just the same as any other unclassified employee in accordance with the city's adopted unclassified resolution. I've also provided some additional information here that I hope will be helpful to this board. Those include, some other salary ranges that I was able to extract from looking at a sampling of our sister jurisdictions, city manager contracts. I was able to get that information from the HR department, which was really helpful. I've also provided some current salary ranges. That includes the salary range for the city manager position, for the deputy city manager position, and also the salary ranges for the department directors for Carson City. And so that hopefully places all the monetary amounts in context. Insurance subsidies is a big provision in this contract. I've provided just some brief overview information in my briefing memo, and hopefully that'll provide guidance. Again, as I said, this briefing memo, I really see this as a vehicle for the prospective employer and also the prospective employee to sort of navigate in. And I'm just kind of providing some guidelines there. Severance is another issue to be discussed on the record. Currently, the agreement would entitle Ms. Paulson to 3 months severance, except under certain circumstances. I think that the proposal on the table right now is to increase that to 6 months. There's also some other miscellaneous matters, including auto allowance, and then other benefits, including, for example, cell phone allowance and so on and so forth. Again, as I said, I want to wrap this up. I really do want to provide ample opportunity for the parties to discuss this, but I'm happy to be on standby and answer any questions.
Why don't you clarify where we are on the insurance reimbursement issues?
For the insurance, my understanding is that Ms. Paulson is proposing, and this would, be a deviation from what's in the contract right now, but Ms. Paulson is proposing that in the event of separation from employment, she would remain on the city's insurance, but she would pay for 100% of that premium for herself, her spouse, and any eligible dependents until such time she's eligible for retirement under the PERS system.
All right. Nancy, you want to add anything?
No, I think Dan did a great job, and I'm agreeable with the agreement.
All right. Board members, any other questions of Dan or Nancy?
I think we still need to talk about the severance, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, and the auto allowance. Those are two items that are still outstanding, and then also the inconsistency in the subsidy provision and the governing provisions. Is that correct, Dan?
That's correct. I mean, those are still some policy decisions to be made. The auto allowance itself, the severance, again, as incorporated into the existing draft agreement, it's 3 months salary. My understanding is that there's sort of a concession that's being made on Ms. Paulson's part with respect to the subsidies for the health coverage, and therefore, I think her proposal, and I don't want to misspeak for her, is to increase that 3 months to 6 months. I do believe that as counsel for the board, I understand my role here. Certainly, the DA's office is not in a position to advocate for or against certain monetary considerations with respect to this employment agreement. However, purely objectively and having looked at some of the ranges that are afforded by other city management contracts, I do think that 6 months is fair and reasonable for the city, and I would have no legal objection to that.
How about the car allowance? Where are we on that?
$3,900.
The automobile allowance currently set forth in the draft agreement is $3,900 per year. I think that's where she is at the moment, and I believe she is agreeable to that amount. Is that correct? Okay.
All right, board, we can talk about whatever you want. Go.
Yeah, and then there was one other change in the language that I think that we had agreed to under the severance clause in the 5th line from the bottom, where it would say, notwithstanding any other provision herein, if Paulson is terminated, we would add the words for cause, including but not limited to, and then delete the words because of.
That's stated better.
It's cleaner.
Yeah, it doesn't change the intent of the sentence, it just cleans it up.
I'm happy to make that change.
Okay.
All right, public comment? All right, board. Somebody want to try a motion? I know the different board members have been talking to Nancy, so somebody want to try a motion?
Go ahead.
Okay, so let me try this. I move to approve the city manager employment agreement between Carson City and Nancy Paulson with the discussed changes to Section 4.4, insurance subsidies after separation from employment. Section 9.3, severance. Regarding the change in language, and then also the change from 3 months to 6 months base salary. Did I get all the changes?
And the correction that Dan will make for the conflict in.
Right, and also addressing the conflict in 9.5. Did I get them all?
Dan, you got them, I think you got them.
Yes, I do.
Thank you for the memorandum, too. And I know that, well, let me start on the middle. We got a motion from Brad, right? Is there did I get a second on that? Was there a second?
Second by John.
Second by John.
But I can't get it.
Because he didn't hit the motion.
He didn't hit the motion. Hit the motion.
So that the other will work. There you go.
All right, now you did it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Discussion of motion, Dan, I'm just going to say thank you for, doing the memorandum. I know it kind of puts you in an awkward position, and next time we do these things, we'll kind of have a little different thought about how to go down it. But, you did a nice job on realizing, what your responsibilities are and what Nancy's are and what ours are. So take that, okay? All right.
Thank you very
John,
much.
Supervisor Barrett, go.
Thank you. I just want to say, everything we do up here is relatively important, but this is probably one of the most important decisions we make. And I just wish our new city manager well, assuming that I know what the vote will be.
I never know what that is. How do you know what that is, man?
I don't, I'm
never know what
guessing.
that is.
Can we make finding two?
Yeah, that's good. Too much traffic. Too many
much traffic.
transactions.
Too much traffic. All right. Public comment, anybody? I don't see anybody. Okay, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Okay, Nancy, go to work now. And don't tell me you're going to change. Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment. So a couple of weeks ago, I had my 20-year, anniversary, hence the whole subsidy discussion. But so I've been thinking a lot about the fact that I've been walking into the same building for the last 20 years, and just the fact that I'm just as happy to do that today as I was on the first day. I just think that says a lot for the city and the employees, and is an excellent reflection of the community. So I just wanted to add that.
And we're lucky to have you. Thank you.
I'm a crier like Karen. Sorry.
Now you can take that off your plate and go to work. All right. All right. All right. Anything further? Nancy, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. All right. Are we ready then, let's see, to break for noon? We'll come back here at 1:30? We'll do non-action items. Okay. Who's got some non-action items?
I just want to, you've seen the banner over the center of town. We have 12 more flower baskets left to sponsor to keep our beauty in a basket going. We also have the opportunity for 8 more. Our capacity at the greenhouse site to raise is 80. We did 72 last year. That's been our high. So if there's anybody out there that wants to sponsor, we have a newly renovated Curry Street. I'd like to expand what we're doing. So just putting it out there. CarsonCityGreenhouse.org is where you can go for the form and where to send your money. And it's $225 for one and $400 for two. Okay? And watering isn't free, so that's why the expense.
Okay, any other board updates? Anybody? All right. Well, I'll say Merry Christmas early, so Merry Christmas. All right, are we ready to adjourn, to recess until 1:30? Ready? We'll be in recess until 1:30.